Chapter 272. The elder of the Blood Moon sect sighed, but his eyes showed a trace of cunning. The contract would only limit him for the time being. When his power was fully recovered, it would be easy to kill a sect disciple within a second. The contract would not be triggered on time, and he would be free from the contract. The elder's mood was slightly better. He stood up and looked at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang sensed the cunning look from the elder. She clearly knew the key of the contract. It was a double-edged sword to have a contract with the elder of the Blood Moon sect. Since she dared to sign the contract, she would never give any chance for the elder to kill her in a second. She must be more powerful soon. My name is Yi Qingtang. You will follow me in the future, Yi Qingtang said. The elder's mouth shivered, but he eventually accepted the situation. However, he rolled his eyes and said, "You are a sect disciple. It's not very appropriate for me to follow you with this body, right?" Yi Qingtang sized up his body. If he followed her with this dried-up corpse, they would be killed if they met any orthodox people. She did not need to imagine returning to the sect. "What's your thought?" Yi Qingtang asked. The elder contemplated for a while, hid the trace of cunning in his eyes, and said, "I will be a burden to you with this body. But, if I can change a body, that will be fine." Change a body? Yi Qingtang frowned but did not say anything. The elder noticed that she hesitated and immediately added. There were quite a few sect disciples there just now. The youth is a good choice. I can follow you in the future if I take over his body. Yi Qingtang remembered how the elder wanted to kill the youth of the Wind Moon sect, and her face clouded instantly. No. The elder gritted his teeth. If he can't, I can take your senior brother's body as well. It will be more convenient for me to follow you. I think the young man who leads the team is not bad. He was referring to Dai Changming. Yi Qingtang shook her head. How about the handsome young man? I think he is suitable as well. The elder suggested again. Yi Qingtang gave him a cold glance. How dare him suggest to take over her senior brother Qin's body? Don't even think about it. The elder of the Blood Moon sect opened his mouth but was speechless. Was he going to follow her with this dried-up body? Yi Qingtang noticed that as well, but she could never allow him to take those innocent disciples' bodies. However, a figure suddenly appeared in her brain. She showed an evil smile and said, I can provide you with one person. You ask the zombies to bring the strongest man over. The elder of the Blood Moon sect did not know who Yi Qingtang picked, but he still gave the order to the zombies at the square with mind control. It was dead silent at the square. Everyone's face was extremely unpleasant as the blood fog spread around. Chapter 273. Zhou Chu squatted at the corner of the cage. He stared at Qin Huan, who constantly looked outside, and said in a weird tone, Qin Huan, don't dream about it anymore. That is the elder of the Blood Moon sect. Yi Qingtang will never be qualified to be his opponent. She'll definitely be dead when the elder digs out her heart. She doesn't even know her own ability. If she hid away, she would not have such consequences. Qin Huan turned his head and stared at Zhou Chu. If Dai Changming had not stopped him, he would have beaten Zhou Chu to death. They belonged to the same sect, but Zhou Chu wanted Yi Qingtang to be dead all the time. Don't waste your time worrying about her. You should think about how to escape now. When the elder of the Blood Moon sect finishes eating her heart, he will return to kill us again, Zhou Chu said. Qin Huan held his fists tightly. I was too nervous just now and forgot to crush the soft jade. The sect elders should be nearby. It may not be too late if we crush the soft jade now, Dai Changming said. Qin Huan said coldly, there's no need for that. Junior Sister Yi had crushed the soft jade when we saw the elder of the Blood Moon sect. If the elders are around, they should be on their way now. What? Dai Changming was stunned. Yi Qingtang could still remain that calm at that kind of moment. Zhou Chu's eyes sparkled as he heard the news. She still has some use then. Luckily, she came to get killed so that she could buy us some time. Hope the elders can reach us as soon as possible, Zhou Chu said. Everyone stared at him in rage. Qin Huan was about to kick his face. However, the zombies suddenly moved. They opened the cage which Qin Huan and rest were in. They pulled the strongest Zhou Chu out of the corner. Zhou Chu's face was pale. He held the bars of the cage tightly, and cold sweat was flowing down his head. Senior brother Dai. Help me. Help me. Dai Changming was stunned and wanted to reach for him instinctively. However, Qin Huan stopped him. Qin Huan stood in front of Dai Changming and stared at Zhou Chu, whose face was totally pale. Zhou Chu, you're right. If you can buy us some time, we may survive. Thus, we will hand over the task to you. Qin Huan kicked Zhou Chu's hands away from the bars, and Zhou Chu was pulled out by the zombies. Dai Changming frowned but did not move anymore. The other disciples who witnessed the scene surprisingly did not speak at all. Zhou Chu hid at the back for the whole time. It was obvious that he wanted the rest to die first. However, he never imagined that he would be the first one to die. Zhou Chu cried and screamed. He was dragged away by the zombies towards the walls of Deer City through the dark path. Zhou Chu struggled and screamed along the way. However, his arms were held tightly by the zombies. It was impossible for him to escape. Zhou Chu was brought to the walls in a short while. His whole body was soaked with cold sweat, and his legs were trembling. When he lifted his eyes, he was shocked when he saw Yi Qingtang, who was standing a few steps away. Yi Qingtang. She is not dead. Chapter 274. Zhou Chu originally thought that Yi Qingtang would definitely be dead after the Blood Moon sect elder chased after her. Yet, unexpectedly, Yi Qingtang was actually standing before him, well and alive. In just a moment, Zhou Chu shouted, Yi Qingtang, why are you still standing over there? Come and save me. Yi Qingtang stood rooted to the ground calmly and looked at the loud Zhou Chu with a faint smile. Yi Qingtang, why are you spacing out? You're a coward who only knows how to escape. Kill these two zombies. If the sect knows that you ignored the safety of other senior brothers in the sect and fled on your own, you'll definitely be expelled out of the sect. Zhou Chu frowned deeply as he struggled while barking loudly. However, such seemingly upright scolding was somehow funny when it came out from his mouth. Yi Qingtang tilted her head slightly and looked at Zhou Chu, who barked incessantly. Zhou Chu, I did not flee on my own. Am I not here to rescue all my senior brothers now? Zhou Chu was slightly surprised and immediately shouted, then quickly get over here to save me. However, Yi Qingtang only looked at Zhou Chu smilingly. Zhou Chu was going to yell again, but a figure suddenly appeared beside Yi Qingtang. With just a look, all his previous craziness vanished immediately. All color faded from his face, and his legs wobbled when he saw the Blood Moon sect elder beside Yi Qingtang. The Blood Moon sect elder's eyes fell on Zhou Chu and sized up the sect disciple before him. Then, his brows were furrowed, and dissatisfaction emerged in his eyes. He looked at Yi Qingtang and said, the person you chose for me is him. His physical constitution is too lousy already. Zhou Chu was stunned. What did that mean? Yi Qingtang cast the Blood Moon sect elder a look and replied casually. That's him. Take it or leave it. The Blood Moon sect elder's lips twitched. At that instant, he did not have any room for being choosy. As the two people talked, Zhou Chu suddenly realized something. His eyes widened, and he glared at Yi Qingtang furiously. Yi Qingtang. You actually submitted to the Blood Moon sect. As a sect disciple, do you even care about the sect's honor? You're utterly shameless. Zhou Chu snarled in fear and uneasiness. No one knew that if he had an option, he would rather replace Yi Qingtang's position. As long as the Blood Moon Sect Elder did not kill him, he would be willing to do anything that the Blood Moon Sect Elder told him to. Yi Qingtang raised a brow at Zhou Chu, who was as miserable as a mad dog. She glanced at the Blood Moon Sect Elder from the corner of her eyes, and her lips curled up slightly. Submit? She chuckled. Zhou Chu, you've got it wrong. I am his master. With that, Zhou Chu was completely frozen. While the expression of Blood Moon Sect Elder beside her darkened, considering that he could not defeat Yi Qingtang, the Elder could only force himself to forego his face and confirmed. That's right. I will listen to Lord Ye's arrangements for everything. What even? Zhou Chu stretched his neck out, and his entire body trembled. His popped eyes stared at the smiling Yi Qingtang. At that instant, her exquisite face was like a nightmare which devoured his soul. Master. Who, exactly are you? Zhou Chu panicked. Never would he have expected that her reply would be this unimaginable. Yi Qingtang is the Blood Moon Sect Elder's master. How could this be? Zhou Chu was simply unwilling to believe everything, but the Blood Moon Sect Elder's behavior was completely like that of a servant. There was no way Zhou Chu could deny it. Chapter 275. In an instant, Zhou Chu collapsed. His face turned extremely pale, and the expression he used to look at Yi Qingtang turned into boundless fear. Junior sister. No. Lord Yi. I am wrong. I failed to recognize your formidability and spouted nonsense. Just treat me as a fart. I beg you to let me off, please. I will definitely work as a slave for you. I will do anything you ask of me. Zhou Chu was utterly shocked. At this instant, Zhou Chu finally realized how foolish he had been. How scary was Yi Qingtang's identity for her to be able to be the Blood Moon Sect Elder's master? Could it be that she was even the Blood Moon Sect's holy lady? At that thought, Zhou Chu was already frightened out of his wits. If he knew this before, he would definitely not dare to offend Yi Qingtang no matter what. Zhou Chu begged in tears. If not for the fact that he was held by the two zombies, he would probably have kowtowed to Yi Qingtang and begged for mercy. Yi Qingtang looked coldly at Zhou Chu, who was covered in tears and mucus. There was not a trace of pity in her eyes. Do anything I ask of you. Why? Are you not going to seek revenge for your older brother Zhou Xian? Yi Qingtang raised a brow. Zhou Chu immediately shook his head like a rattled drum and frantically said, My brother brought it to himself. Spare my life, Lord Yi. I really did not oppose you on purpose. It's all the inner sect Ning Luo's idea. He was the one who made me and my brother find a chance to get rid of you. It really has nothing to do with me. I am wrong. Zhou Chu wailed and directly pushed all the blame to Ning Luo, not daring to say that he had personal motives for opposing Yi Qingtang initially. Ning Luo, Yi Qingtang frowned. She had heard of Ning Luo's name in her previous life. He was the top genius in the inner sect of Xianling sect and was also the favorite disciple of the inner sect Sword Faction's elder. He was extremely talented. However, Yi Qingtang did not cross paths with him in both her previous and current lifetimes. Now, she had only entered Xianling sect for a few months. Why was it that Ning Luo suddenly targeted her? Yi Qingtang could not find an answer no matter how she thought. Zhou Chu saw Yi Qingtang's reaction and said hurriedly as though he clutched the last straw which could save his life, It's all Ning Luo. Right after you passed the sect assessment, Ning Luo sent someone to my brother and told him to kill you somehow. My brother and I are only outer sect disciples, but Ning Luo was an inner sect elite. Obviously, we didn't dare to disobey his orders. Thus, we offended you. Please spare my life. Yi Qingtang looked down. After thinking over and over, she still did not know when she bred enmity with Ning Luo. However, Yi Qingtang looked up and fixed her eyes on Zhou Chu again. Her lips suddenly curled into a smile. So I accused you. Zhou Chu swallowed his saliva, and his heart palpitated violently. Yi Qingtang said, since it is so, I'll give you a chance. Zhou Chu widened his eyes, and hope filled his eyes. Then, Yi Qingtang looked away and continued. I'll give you a chance, to become a Blood Moon sect elder. Once Yi Qingtang finished her sentence, Zhou Chu gasped, and an ominous feeling rose within him. In the next second, Yi Qingtang darted a look at the Blood Moon sect elder who had been waiting for a long time. Now, his body is yours. No. Zhou Chu screamed in horror as the Blood Moon sect elder took a step forward and appeared before Zhou Chu. Chapter 276. The dry, savage face of the Blood Moon sect elder was suddenly reflected in Zhou Chu's fearful eyes. The Blood Moon sect elder placed a hand on top of Zhou Chu's and held it tightly. Opening its mouth wide, blood fog suddenly emitted out from the Blood Moon sect elder's mouth and entered Zhou Chu's eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. As the blood fog gradually entered Zhou Chu's body, the Blood Moon sect elder's eye lost its insidious glint, and the dried body fell on the ground with a loud sound. While the horror on Zhou Chu's face suddenly disappeared, the two zombies beside him released their hold on him instantly. Zhou Chu frowned slightly. Looking at his hands, he took a deep breath, and the blood fog that lingered on his face was absorbed into the body. When he looked up, his eyes no longer contained despair and was replaced with a solemn expression instead. A blood crescent symbol appeared between his brows. Yi Qingtang watched this strange scene, and after noticing that the expression in Zhou Chu's eyes changed, she knew that the Zhou Chu before her was already possessed by the Blood Moon sect elder. This person's endowment is inferior, and his body is too lousy. Despise was written all over the Blood Moon sect elder's face. Although he changed into a living and muscular body, this person's body was exasperatingly lousy when compared to the young boy from Wind Moon sect whom he had his eyes on previously. Be contented, Yi Qingtang said while folding her arms. If Zhou Chu was not here, she really would not be able to find an unlucky person for the Blood Moon sect elder to possess. The Blood Moon sect elder touched his face and calmed down a little after feeling that this body was, at least, much more supple than that dried corpse. This person is called Zhou Chu, and he's an outer sect disciple of Xianling sect. He had an older brother previously, but the brother is already dead. You only need to follow me using his identity. Yi Qingtang ordered the Blood Moon sect elder. The Blood Moon sect elder listened obediently. The dried corpse that had lost a soul laid on the ground silently. The Blood Moon sect elder looked at his previous body emotionlessly. He bent down, removed some belongings from the corpse, and took out a revolving soul orb that was about the size of a palm from his cloak. That revolving soul orb looked crystal clear, but there was a clump of fog in the orb while its top and bottom ends each had a dragon claw of which the entire orb was set between. When the Blood Moon sect elder saw this revolving soul orb, his heart wavered. He put on a casual act and brought it to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang looked at the object in the Blood Moon sect elder's hand questioningly. What is this? The Blood Moon sect elder replied. This is the revolving soul orb and is one of the secret treasures of the Blood Moon sect. It can absorb the essence in the world and transfer it for the holder to absorb. It is a weapon to raise one's cultivation. Since there's a contract between us, I'll just gift this to you. Yi Qingtang raised a brow slightly. Was he so kind? How do I use this thing? Yi Qingtang took the revolving soul orb over and inspected it. The Blood Moon sect elder replied. You must be at the peak of martial qi level 2 to use this item. Yi Qingtang's interest was initially piqued as she felt that this revolving soul orb was a treasure that was hard to come by. But when she heard the words, martial qi level 2, the interest in her heart vanished completely. Peak of martial qi level 2. What was that concept? In terms of sects, normal outer sect disciples were at most Khanate level 9. Only by entering the inner sect to cultivate was one able to truly be exposed to the martial qi realm. Chapter 277, Martial Qi was a grade that only inner sect disciples possessed. There were 3 grades between Martial Qi Level 1 and Martial Qi Level 2, which were called First Heaven, Second Heaven, and Third Heaven. Between each of these 3 grades, there were 3 stages. Advancing from each stage was extremely difficult. In Xianling sect, those who could reach this realm most likely were only the inner sect elders who were in charge of internal affairs. He was truly someone the status of a Blood Moon sect elder. Even though he had been miserable for thousands of years, a casual item he took out was already a Martial Qi Level 2 treasure. Yi Qingtang lived for 300 over years in her previous life, and she was already at the Paragon level when she suffered a downfall. She had seen many of such treasures and obviously knew how beneficial this item was to people at the peak of Martial Qi Level 2. However, it was useless to the current Yi Qingtang, and she could only keep it for future use. Thank you then. Yi Qingtang kept the revolving soul orb. Don't mention about it. This is what I should do. I can't use this item for now, and there's no use leaving it aside. The Blood Moon sect elder was elated when he saw Yi Qingtang keeping the revolving soul orb. This revolving soul orb was indeed as powerful as what he said, but it had a disadvantage. The revolving soul orb would absorb the essence in the world continuously, and if the essence was not absorbed by someone for a long time, the essence would exceed the revolving soul orb's capacity and explode. The Blood Moon sect elder narrowed his eyes slightly and hid away the sly look in his eyes. He was destined to be unable to kill Yi Qingtang right now because of the contract between them, but, if she died from the revolving soul orb's explosion, it would be completely unrelated to him. When she died, the contract would naturally be nullified, and he could regain his freedom. The Blood Moon sect elder planned out everything well in his heart, though his face did not reveal anything. Get rid of your corpse. You're Zhou Chu from now on, Yi Qingtang said. Your corpse. The Blood Moon sect elder's lips twitched but still obediently picked up his dried corpse and absorbed all the remaining energy. This dried corpse had been in existence for thousands of years, and it was the Blood Moon sect elder's power which allowed the corpse to maintain its current appearance. Now that it lost its very last remnants of energy, the corpse quickly turned into ash and vanished along with the wind. Yi Qingtang nodded at the sight and led the Blood Moon sect elder towards the square where the disciples were locked up at. As she walked, she added on. Get rid of the blood fog around the city. You cannot touch those people in the square anymore. The Blood Moon sect elder accepted the orders in obedience but sneered internally. I'll let you order me around now. When that revolving soul orb explodes. In the square, the people in despair looked at the red light that filled the sky, and the shadow of death remained in their eyes. Qin Huan sat in the cage distraughtly as he pulled his hair. Regret was written all over his face. I should not have brought junior sister Yi here. It's all my fault. I brought harm onto her. At that moment, Qin Huan was extremely regretful. Had he known how dangerous this trip was, he would definitely not agree to bring Yi Qingtang along. It was ultimately too late now. Dai Changming sighed quietly. Under such circumstances, all of them had become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Dai Changming glanced across the bloody scene around him, but his eyes were suddenly attracted by 2 figures not far away. He suddenly widened his eyes and patted the regretful Qin Huan. Junior brother Qin, take a look quickly. Who is that? Qin Huan looked up with a weary expression but was utterly stunned from the sight. He rushed forward and clutched on the metal cage tightly. Shock filled his eyes when he saw the figure that was nearing them. Junior sister Yi. Chapter 278. Yi Qingtang and the emotionless Zhou Chu walked into the square together. Not just Qin Huan but other Xianling sect disciples were all dumbfounded. What was this situation? How did the 2 of them actually return? The 2 people that were originally thought to be definitely dead walked into everyone's line of sight. Qin Huan returned to his senses and spoke hurriedly. Junior sister Yi, leave now. That bastard elder might return again. Qin Huan's face was full of worry. However, Yi Qingtang could not help but laugh at his words. She secretly peered at the bastard elder beside her from the corner of her eyes and saw that the Blood Moon sect elder's expression was completely dark. If not for Yi Qingtang's warning to not touch these people, he would have already dug Qin Huan's heart out and bit it into pieces. Who is a bastard? Your entire family is filled with bastards. Yi Qingtang held her laughter back and walked to the metal cage with a serious expression. Hacking the cage door with her sword, she said, "The Blood Moon sect elder left already. Don't worry, senior brothers. I think he will not be back for a while." Everyone was stunned. Left. Left already? Qin Huan repeated, dumbfounded. Michum. I don't know why either, but he suddenly left. Yi Qingtang was lazy to come up with a reason. Anyway, the Blood Moon sect was extremely mysterious to everyone, and it never left any trace in their movements. Thus, she could get away with a random excuse. The frightened Xianling sect disciples fell into a trance as they looked at the open cage. Why did it leave just like that? After releasing all her senior brothers, Yi Qingtang headed to another cage. The other cages in the square were long empty, and the ground was piled with corpses. Only in that cage sat a young boy whose eyes were swollen from crying. He sat there absent-mindedly and seemed to have no more tears left to cry. His hollow eyes looked at the dead body of his senior brother which laid in his hands, and he did not sense any movement in his surrounding. When Yi Qingtang saw that young teen from Wind Moon sect, she could not help but lament internally. She walked forward and slashed the cage. Your senior brother protected you with his life not because he wants to see you being defeated like this, Yi Qingtang said and stood beside the youth. The young teen suddenly lifted his head up, and his teary eyes looked at Yi Qingtang in confusion. He knew that the Blood Moon sect elder targeted him just now, but it was because of this girl's sudden appearance which attracted the Blood Moon sect elder's appearance, thus allowing him to escape a calamity. Senior brother, the boy just said something, but tears fell uncontrollably. Tears stained his small face, and this really made one feel sorry. Yi Qingtang handed the sword in her hand to the young teen. Live on well. You can only avenge your senior brother by making yourself even more powerful. The Blood Moon sect elder who was standing aside felt the corners of his lips twitch. The boy looked at the sword that he lost and then looked down at his senior brother's corpse. He sniffed, wiped away his tears, and stretched a hand out to grab the sword. I will. I must avenge senior brother. I will personally chop off that old demon's head. The old demon, in just a short while, the Blood Moon sect elder became both a bastard and an old demon, and this was probably way more than the number of curses he heard in thousands of years. Everyone escaped from the cage and regained freedom, but no one was able to relax in this bloody scene. Chapter 279 Martial Qi was a grade that only inner sect disciples possessed. There were 3 grades between Martial Qi Level 1 and Martial Qi Level 2 which were called First Heaven, Second Heaven, and Third Heaven. Between each of these 3 grades, there were 3 stages. Advancing from each stage was extremely difficult. In Xianling sect, those who could reach this realm most likely were only the inner sect elders who were in charge of internal affairs. He was truly someone the status of a Blood Moon sect elder, even though he had been miserable for thousands of years. A casual item he took out was already a Martial Qi Level 2 treasure. Yi Qingtang lived for 300 over years in her previous life, and she was already at the Paragon level when she suffered a downfall. She had seen many of such treasures and obviously knew how beneficial this item was to people at the peak of Martial Qi Level 2. However, it was useless to the current Yi Qingtang, and she could only keep it for future use. Thank you then. Yi Qingtang kept the revolving soul orb. Don't mention about it. This is what I should do. I can't use this item for now, and there's no use leaving it aside. The Blood Moon sect elder was elated when he saw Yi Qingtang keeping the revolving soul orb. This revolving soul orb was indeed as powerful as what he said, but it had a disadvantage. The revolving soul orb would absorb the essence in the world continuously, and if the essence was not absorbed by someone for a long time, the essence would exceed the revolving soul orb's capacity and explode. The Blood Moon Sect Elder narrowed his eyes slightly and hid away the sly look in his eyes. He was destined to be unable to kill Yi Qingtang right now because of the contract between them, but, if she died from the revolving soul orb's explosion, it would be completely unrelated to him. When she died, the contract would naturally be nullified, and he could regain his freedom. The Blood Moon Sect Elder planned out everything well in his heart, though his face did not reveal anything. Get rid of your corpse. You're Zhou Chu from now on, Yi Qingtang said. Your corpse. The Blood Moon Sect Elder's lips twitched but still obediently picked up his dried corpse and absorbed all the remaining energy. This dried corpse had been in existence for thousands of years, and it was the Blood Moon Sect Elder's power which allowed the corpse to maintain its current appearance. Now that it lost its very last remnants of energy, the corpse quickly turned into ash and vanished along with the wind. Yi Qingtang nodded at the sight and led the Blood Moon Sect Elder towards the square where the disciples were locked up at. As she walked, she added on. Get rid of the blood fog around the city. You cannot touch those people in the square anymore. The Blood Moon Sect Elder accepted the orders in obedience but sneered internally. I'll let you order me around now. When that revolving soul orb explodes. In the square, the people in despair looked at the red light that filled the sky, and the shadow of death remained in their eyes. Qin Huan sat in the cage distraughtly as he pulled his hair. Regret was written all over his face. I should not have brought junior sister Yi here. It's all my fault. I brought harm onto her. At that moment, Qin Huan was extremely regretful. Had he known how dangerous this trip was, he would definitely not agree to bring Yi Qingtang along. It was ultimately too late now. Dai Changming sighed quietly. Under such circumstances, all of them had become lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Dai Changming glanced across the bloody scene around him, but his eyes were suddenly attracted by two figures not far away. He suddenly widened his eyes and patted the regretful Qin Huan. Junior brother Qin, take a look quickly. Who is that? Qin Huan looked up with a weary expression but was utterly stunned from the sight. He rushed forward and clutched on the metal cage tightly. Shock filled his eyes when he saw the figure that was nearing them. Junior sister Yi. Chapter 280. Yi Qingtang and the emotionless Zhou Chu walked into the square together. Not just Qin Huan but other Xianling sect disciples were all dumbfounded. What was this situation? How did the two of them actually return? The two people that were originally thought to be definitely dead walked into everyone's line of sight. Qin Huan returned to his senses and spoke hurriedly. Junior sister Yi, leave now. That bastard elder might return again. Qin Huan's face was full of worry. However, Yi Qingtang could not help but laugh at his words. She secretly peered at the bastard elder beside her from the corner of her eyes and saw that the Blood Moon Sect Elder's expression was completely dark. If not for Yi Qingtang's warning to not touch these people, he would have already dug Qin Huan's heart out and bit it into pieces. Who is a bastard? Your entire family is filled with bastards. Yi Qingtang held her laughter back and walked to the metal cage with a serious expression. Hacking the cage door with her sword, she said, the Blood Moon Sect Elder left already. Don't worry, senior brothers. I think he will not be back for a while. Everyone was stunned. Left. Left already? Qin Huan repeated, dumbfounded. Michum. I don't know why either, but he suddenly left. Yi Qingtang was lazy to come up with a reason. Anyway, the Blood Moon Sect was extremely mysterious to everyone, and it never left any trace in their movements. Thus, she could get away with a random excuse. The frightened Xianling sect disciples fell into a trance as they looked at the open cage. Why did it leave just like that? After releasing all her senior brothers, Yi Qingtang headed to another cage. The other cages in the square were long empty, and the ground was piled with corpses. Only in that cage sat a young boy whose eyes were swollen from crying. He sat there absent-mindedly and seemed to have no more tears left to cry. His hollow eyes looked at the dead body of his senior brother which laid in his hands, and he did not sense any movement in his surrounding. When Yiqing Tang saw that young teen from Wind Moon sect, she could not help but lament internally. She walked forward and slashed the cage. Your senior brother protected you with his life not because he wants to see you being defeated like this, Yiqing Tang said and stood beside the youth. The young teen suddenly lifted his head up, and his teary eyes looked at Yiqing Tang in confusion. He knew that the Blood Moon sect elder targeted him just now, but it was because of this girl's sudden appearance which attracted the Blood Moon sect elder's appearance, thus allowing him to escape a calamity. Senior brother, the boy just said something, but tears fell uncontrollably. Tears stained his small face, and this really made one feel sorry. Yiqing Tang handed the sword in her hand to the young teen. Live on well. You can only avenge your senior brother by making yourself even more powerful. The Blood Moon sect elder who was standing aside felt the corners of his lips twitch. The boy looked at the sword that he lost and then looked down at his senior brother's corpse. He sniffed, wiped away his tears, and stretched a hand out to grab the sword. I will. I must avenge senior brother. I will personally chop off that old demon's head. The old demon, in just a short while, the Blood Moon sect elder became both a bastard and an old demon, and this was probably way more than the number of curses he heard in thousands of years. Everyone escaped from the cage and regained freedom, but no one was able to relax in this bloody scene. Chapter 281, The blood fog that initially enveloped Deer City began to disappear slowly. It was then that everyone faintly felt that there was a way out. Without daring to delay at all, they quickly seized this time to rush out to the city gate. Qin Huan wiped the cold sweat on his face away. Glancing at the Blood Moon sect who was following behind Yiqing Tang, he uttered in annoyance. Why did this rascal Zhou Chu return as well? Wasn't he dragged away by the zombies just now? I thought he would definitely be slaughtered by the Blood Moon sect elder. Honestly speaking, Qin Huan really wished for such a lousy person like Zhou Chu to just die early. Yiqing Tang looked at the Blood Moon sect elder, whose face was as black as the base of a pot, and laughed in her heart, though she maintained a calm expression on her face. He was able to survive only because the Blood Moon sect elder left hurriedly. Qin Huan did not think much to it as well. Everyone dashed towards the city gate of Deer City, but before they reached the city gate, they suddenly saw a group of people rushing into the city loudly. Almost instantly, everyone's hair stood on ends. Could it be that the Blood Moon sect elder returned with his underlings? Swiftly, the group of people entered Deer City, and everyone sighed in relief when they had a clear look of the incoming people. There were over 10 people wearing different sect uniforms, and the people in the lead were 6 elderlies with gray hair. And among the 6 elderlies, 2 of them were wearing Xianling sect clothes that represented the status of an elder. It's the inner sect elders. Happiness filled Dai Changming when he saw the group of people. Elders from different sects were rushing over with wardens and disciples. Xianling sect disciples greet 2 elders. Dai Changming immediately led his junior brothers and sisters in greeting the elders. It should be known that outer sect disciples like them did not have any chance of meeting the inner sect elders. These 2 elders were probably investigating in the area and rushed over because of the signal that Yiqing Tang sent out previously. The elders who came along with the others were Elder Lin of the inner sect Sword faction and Elder Qin of the inner sect Array faction. Other than them, elders from Wind Moon sect and other sects hurried there as well. When the impressive group of people entered Deer City, they felt an aura that had not completely dissipated. What exactly happened? Elder Lin frowned slightly at the disciples who knelt before him. Elder Qin and he brought a team to investigate in the vicinity, suddenly sensed the signal, and thus hurried over with sect elders who were searching in the same area. Elder, we encountered a Blood Moon sect elder in Deer City, Dai Changming said. Blood Moon Sect Elder. Everyone had a shocked look on their faces after hearing him. Recently, disciples from various sects disappeared unknowingly. The elders have investigated for a long time but never found a clue. The places they went to were all deserted, yet unexpectedly. Dai Changming and the rest were actually able to find a clue. However, what surprised them even more was that it had to do with the Blood Moon sect. What is the situation? Elder Qin asked. Dai Changming immediately recounted everything that happened in Deer City. Right after, a few elders brought some people and headed to the square. The elders' faces turned white instantly when greeted with the bloody scene. They were afraid that the recent disappearances of the various sects' disciples were all related to the Blood Moon sect. Countless corpses of sect disciples laid in the entire square. When the Wind Moon sect elder saw the corpse of that inner sect disciple, his face paled, and he shut his eyes in pain. Master, the young teen from Wind Moon sect looked at his master with red, puffy eyes. Chapter 282, The expressions of the two Xianling sect elders were rather ugly as they did not expect the matter to be related to the Blood Moon sect. The Blood Moon sect had been exterminated for thousands of years. I really never thought that there would be traces of resurrection. Elder Lin's brows were tightly furrowed. He looked at the group, and his eyes eventually fell on Yi Qingtang. Did you see the Blood Moon sect elder leave with your own eyes? Yi Qingtang looked up, and a cold expression darted across her eyes when she made eye contact with the domineering Elder Lin. Elder Lin. They really had a fate. In her previous life, it was Elder Lin from the inner sect sword faction who secretly went after her life after discovering her heart of the demon god, and senior brother Yun died in Elder Lin's hands in order to protect her. Yi Qingtang knew that there would ultimately be a day where she would meet with Elder Lin again after entering Xianling sect, but meeting him now, the desire to murder him in her intensified. If not for Elder Lin back then, there would have been no way the world would know that the heart of the demon god was in Yi Qingtang's body. Yi Qingtang would not have ended up in the distressing situation of being hunted down by everyone, and Yun Shu would not have died. It could be said that Elder Lin was the culprit who caused Yi Qingtang to be hunted down for her life by everyone in her previous life. Her eyes blazed with hatred when she came face to face with her enemy, but Yi Qingtang was aware that she was not Elder Lin's opponent right now. She could only hide away the coldness in her eyes, look down, and reply. Yes, I witnessed the Blood Moon sect elder leaving. Senior brother Zhou saw it as well. Then, Yi Qingtang looked at the Blood Moon sect elder who became Zhou Chu. Yes, I saw it as well, said the Blood Moon sect elder calmly. Elder Lin exchanged a look with Elder Qin. The incident today was the only clue they found, and it resolved the mystery about the disappearance of the disciples. However, it had to do with the Blood Moon sect, and it was by no means a trivial matter. It is good that everyone is safe. You all had a big shock. Once you all return to the sect, report everything you saw today in detail so it will be easier to organize the information. Elder Qin comforted the frightened disciples. Being able to escape safely after encountering someone of a Blood Moon sect elder status was simply an unimaginable feat. Xianling sect did not suffer many losses this time. Apart from the death of one person, other disciples were not injured. Rather, there were heavy casualties for other sects, and Wind Moon sect even lost a highly talented inner sect disciple. At that thought, Elder Qin could not help but look at Yi Qingtang from aside. According to what Dai Changming said previously, a major reason that accounted for their small loss was that Yi Qingtang diverted the Blood Moon sect elders' attention. Otherwise, not just Xianling sect disciples but even that last surviving teen from Wind Moon sect would be buried here. As early as during the sect assessment, Elder Qin had already thought rather highly of this new disciple, and now, he was even more satisfied. Elder Lin noticed the look of approval in Elder Qin's eyes as well, but there was no trace of a smile on his face. After glancing past Yi Qingtang, he frowned slightly. He could faintly feel a strange aura from Yi Qingtang's body. Yi Qingtang sensed Elder Lin's gaze, and her heart skipped a beat. She looked down calmly, though her attention landed on the space ring on her finger. The revolving soul orb that the Blood Moon sect elder gave her just now was currently stored in the space ring. This space ring was of low quality and was simply unable to conceal the aura of the revolving soul orb. Looking at Elder Lin's reaction, she realized that he must have sensed something. Chapter 283, Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. She could not keep this revolving soul orb anymore, and if the sect elders found out about it, it would be even harder for her to explain. Then, Yi Qingtang suddenly looked up and walked forward. I have something to report. Elder Lin frowned while Elder Qin asked with a smile, is there anything? Under everyone's gaze, Yi Qingtang immediately took out the revolving soul orb from her space ring. The Blood Moon sect elder dropped this item when he left. I thought that this may be related to the Blood Moon sect. The moment the revolving soul orb was taken out, all the elders from different sects were attracted to it instantly. This is the revolving soul orb. A Wind Moon sect elder was taken aback as shock filled his eyes. The revolving soul orb was an extremely superior enchanted cultivation armament. It rarely appeared in sects, and only Wind Moon sect had similar enchanted armament, of which was used to guard the sect. When the Blood Moon sect was still in existence, its members were so powerful that ordinary sect disciples could not even be compared to them, causing everyone to bristle with anger. This power was mainly because the Blood Moon sect possessed plenty of formidable enchanted armaments which others could not even imagine. And the revolving soul orb was one of the enchanted armaments. Not just the Wind Moon sect elder, but all the elders from different sects were shocked when they saw the revolving soul orb. Elder Lin and Elder Qin widened their eyes. This item was dropped by the Blood Moon sect elder? Elder Lin asked with a serious expression. Yi Qingtang replied. Yes. Elder Qin ran a hand through his beard and raised a brow. Legend has it that the revolving soul orb is an enchanted armament at the state of martial qi level 2 and was also a mystical artifact that could allow someone at the peak of martial qi level 2 to break through to martial qi level 3. This item is extremely rare, and only the Blood Moon sect could refine it. It should be right. Then, an infatuated expression emerged in the eyes of both Elder Qin and Elder Lin. Both of them were at the late stage of martial qi level 2 and were only a tiny gap away from the peak. If they could obtain this item, there was an opportunity for them to enter the martial qi level 3 state. Although martial qi level 3 and martial qi level 2 were only a grade apart, there was a world of differences between these two. The emotions of both elders fell into Yi Qingtang's eyes. Her lips curled up into a smile as a thought suddenly came to her. I will present this item to the elders and hope that more clues regarding the Blood Moon sect can be found using this item. Then, Yi Qingtang walked to stand in front of the elders with the revolving soul orb in her hands. The Blood Moon sect elder was instantly dumbfounded. At that instant, there was greed in both Elder Lin and Elder Qin's eyes. They were not short of treasures given their high statues of an inner sect elder, but the revolving soul orb was such a precious item that was ultimately beyond their reach. Elder Lin took a deep breath quietly and lifted his chin while glancing at Elder Qin from the corner of his eyes. He was the elder of Xianling sect's sword faction and had the highest position among the inner sect elders. Moreover, Yi Qingtang was a disciple in the outer sect sword faction, and it was logical that the revolving soul orb should definitely end up in his possession. Elder Qin realized this point as well, and his eyes revealed his slight disappointment. Had he known things would play out this way, he would have asked the outer sect elder to get in touch with Yi Qingtang since he thought very highly of her from the start anyway. But now, it was too late. Meanwhile, the elders from other sects had a gloomy expression, and their faces turned pale in anger as they looked at the revolving soul orb in Yi Qingtang's hand. Their disciples and Xianling sect's disciples both encountered the Blood Moon sect elder, but why was it that their disciples did not have such good luck? Not only did they not pick up such a precious treasure, they even lost their lives instead. It was seriously infuriating. Chapter 284, and just when Elder Lin confidently thought that Yi Qingtang would hand the revolving soul orb to him without a doubt, Yi Qingtang changed her direction slightly and handed it straight in front of Elder Qin. Please accept this item, Elder. Elder Qin was taken aback, and delight flashed across his eyes. He stretched his hand out to take the revolving soul orb, and a smile bloomed on his face. Sure. What a promising student who is worth teaching. I will definitely keep this item well. Yi Qingtang, you made a huge contribution this time. The sect will definitely reward you handsomely. Never would Elder Qin have thought that such a blessing would happen to him, and he laughed brightly. Elder Lin, who was putting on a front, felt the arrogance on his face disappear completely. He glared at Yi Qingtang, who gave the revolving soul orb to Elder Qin, as though he was going to devour her alive. He never expected Yi Qingtang to actually present the revolving soul orb to Elder Qin. This was simply a slap in his face. Elder Qin glanced at Elder Lin with a proud expression and showered Yi Qingtang with compliments. Yi Qingtang stood there humbly and internally scoffed when she saw Elder Lin going green in the face from the corner of her eyes. On the other hand, the Blood Moon sect elder's lips twitched when he witnessed Yi Qingtang handing the revolving soul orb into Elder Qin's hands. The elders from other sects were extremely envious but could not do anything about it as well. They secretly bad-mouthed Elder Qin for having dumb luck, as Xianling's sect did not have many casualties, and he even obtained a treasure without doing anything. The Xianling sect disciples also had envious expressions on their faces, but they were envious of Yi Qingtang, who picked up the revolving soul orb, and not Elder Qin. Judging from the rare excitement of all the elders, it was easy to realize how precious that treasure was. Yi Qingtang really made a huge contribution this time, and there would probably be many rewards waiting for her once she returned to the sect. Elder Qin smiled blissfully, but Elder Lin pulled a long face. After searching Deer City for another round and ensuring that there was no trace of the Blood Moon sect elder, the sects finally returned. Before leaving, the teen from Wind Moon sect suddenly found Yi Qingtang. He bowed to her and expressed his gratitude before leaving with his master. Elder Qin and Elder Lin led the group back. Yi Qingtang and the rest were considered to have completed this mission and returned to the sect immediately. Qin Huan was very puzzled over why Yi Qingtang gave the item to the elder of the inner sect Array faction. You foolish girl. Elder Lin is then the elder of the inner sect Sword faction. Why didn't you give the item to him? Yi Qingtang chuckled. I like it. Qin Huan remained silent. Despite meeting with danger, everyone was able to return safely and was thankful to Yi Qingtang for diverting the Blood Moon sect elder's attention. When they returned to the sect, Dai Changming headed straight to submit the mission. Everyone bade their goodbyes and returned to take a required rest after suffering a huge fright. The Blood Moon sect elder looked at the sect disciples who walked about the sect as though he saw an infinite surge of spirit energy waiting right before him for him to obtain. Yi Qingtang sensed the Blood Moon sect elder's gaze and warned. If you don't want your identity to be exposed, you better not do anything funny. The Blood Moon sect elder immediately put on a loyal and honest look. That's a given. Yi Qingtang cast him a look skeptically. As Yi Qingtang was about to return to the dorm, a commotion occurred outside the sect, and a faint smell of blood spread in the air. Chapter 285, Committing Murder to Snatch a Treasure 1. This smell of blood is so aromatic. The Blood Moon sect elder was indulged in the bloody smell which was rich with spirit energy. Yi Qingtang rolled her eyes at him and headed out to find out what happened. However, when Yi Qingtang scanned the situation, she suddenly saw a terribly battered figure which caused her mind to explode. Outside Xianling's sect, Yun Shu, who was covered in blood, collapsed on the clouds with feeble breathing. A large amount of blood gushed out from his body and stained the clouds beneath his body. All color was lost from his good-looking face, leaving a complexion as pale as a sheet of paper. Senior brother Yun. Yi Qingtang, alarmed, dashed out of the sect immediately. A group of disciples surrounded and looked at the miserable Yun Shu in confusion. Yi Qingtang hurried to Yun Shu's side and held Yun Shu up. Yun Shu looked up with great effort, and when he saw Yi Qingtang, his body trembled slightly. He suddenly clutched onto Yi Qingtang tightly. Junior sister Yi. Senior brother Yun, what happened to you? Who injured you? Yi Qingtang's eyebrows were tightly furrowed. Lu Xiuwen. Junior sister Yi. Lu Xiuwen. He injured me, in order to snatch my Shangyue fire tripod, Yun Shu said strenuously as though every word was squeezed out from his throat. Shock filled Yi Qingtang's eyes. Lu Xiuwen. Yun Shu already had no energy left and passed out after forcing this sentence out of his mouth. Yi Qingtang looked at the long trail of blood behind Yun Shu and did not dare to imagine how Yun Shu crawled back to Xianling sect with such heavy injuries. The bright red blood stain pierced her eyes. Senior brother Yun. I will not let Lu Xiuwen off. Don't worry. Yi Qingtang carried Yun Shu and rushed into the sect with the Blood Moon sect elder following right after. In her previous life, Yi Qingtang only knew that Lu Xiuwen was the one who revealed her secret regarding the heart of the demon god, yet it turned out that he actually harmed Yun Shu secretly as well. It seemed that Yun Shu was so wretched in his previous life exactly because of Lu Xiuwen's murderous schemes. Yi Qingtang had heard of the Shangyue fire tripod that Yun Shu mentioned earlier. That was the treasure that he happened to obtain in the previous mission. It could increase one's cultivation speed and was extremely rare, and Yi Qingtang was happy for him as well. Yet, unexpectedly, this Fengyue fire tripod actually caused him to meet with a fatal disaster. Yi Qingtang swiftly sent Yun Shu to the physician, who was also stunned to see Yun Shu's injuries and quickly treated him. As the blood-stained clothes were disrobed from Yun Shu, a deep cut on his chest of which his bones could be seen was revealed. An intense murderous expression flashed across Yi Qingtang's eyes. The cut on Yun Shu's chest was extremely deep and was less than a finger away from his heart. If the cut was just a little deeper, Yun Shu would have lost his life already. The news of Yun Shu's severe injuries spread throughout the entire outer sect rapidly. It was then that Yi Qingtang realized that Yun Shu was out on a mission with a group of people including Lu Xiuwen and Su Wan. However, the group had already returned to the sect to submit their mission 2 days ago and even reported that Yun Shu met with a mishap in the mission. Now that Yun Shu suddenly returned, there was indeed a huge stir, and the warden of the disciplinary hall immediately ordered for Yun Shu to be brought over after hearing what Yun Shu said before he fainted. Chapter 286. Although Yun Shu did regain consciousness after the emergency treatment, he was still in a very bad condition. His body was so weak that he could not even stand still, and his hands were impaired from using them to crawl back to the sect such that it would be extremely strenuous for him to wield a sword in the future. The physician treated Yun Shu while sighing in pity at the same time. Physician, how are senior brother Yun's injuries? Yi Qingtang asked with a frown. The physician sighed. The wound on his chest is very deep, but it is fortunate that his heart was not affected, and his life is not in danger. However, the physician held his words back and only continued after a while. His injuries have been dragged on for too long. He probably crawled all the way back to the sect, and there are too many wounds all over. His knee joints and hands are severely wounded and too much blood was lost. This would implicate his spirit root is damaged, and in the future, the physician did not finish his sentence and merely shook his head regretfully. Yun Shu was born with good natural endowments, and if he had not met with this accident, he definitely would have achieved many things in the future. However, there were numerous injuries this time. There might be many effects even after he recovered. Thus, he might not progress much in the future. It was really a pity. Yi Qingtang clenched her fists tightly and frowned. This was how the senior brother Yun in her previous life fell into a slump. The once talented youth who had a bright future ahead of him was now destroyed by Lu Xiuwen. Junior sister Yi. I want to go. I want to unveil. Lu Ziyuan's disgusting face, in front of everyone, Yun Shu said with difficulty as he clenched his teeth. For the first time, there was hatred in his warm eyes. He would never forget the moment when Lu Xiuwen attacked him. They were clearly brothers from the same sect, yet Lu Xiuwen wanted to kill Yun Shu just to snatch the Shangyue fire tripod from Yun Shu. Yi Qingtang frowned even more deeply as she looked at Yun Shu's current state. In her previous life, Yun Shu must have been through this as well. Otherwise, he would not have ended up like that. However, a few years later, Lu Xiuwen was still doing well in the outer sect and even became the best outer sect disciple. Evidently, Yun Shu's report failed. Lu Xiuwen definitely must have made full preparations long ago, and even if Yun Shu reported the case to the warden, there was no way he could ensure Lu Xiuwen to be convicted. Please help me to bring my senior brother to the disciplinary hall. I will head there soon, Yi Qingtang said to the physician slowly and quietly took a piece of Yun Shu's blood-stained clothes from behind her. There was a flicker in the eyes of the Blood Moon sect elder, who had been following beside Yi Qingtang, when he saw Yi Qingtang's actions. Seeing that Yi Qingtang took her leave, the Blood Moon sect elder followed after her immediately. Yi Qingtang did not go to the disciplinary hall straight but instead headed for the dormitory that the new disciples were staying in. Many disciples were surrounded in the disciplinary hall, and the outer sect elder in charge of discipline frowned at the two disciples before him. Yun Shu, you said that Lu Xiuwen secretly attacked you and stole your Shangyue fire tripod when you were severely injured after you all finished your mission. Is this true? In the big hall of the disciplinary hall, the pale Yun Shu was standing with difficulty while being supported by another disciple. Blood seeped out from the bandage around his chest. His lips were so pale that there was no color at all, and his legs were trembling uncontrollably as his body was overly weak. Elder, everything I said is true. It was Lu Xiuwen who led me to a deserted area and suddenly attacked me. After severely injuring me, he snatched the Shangyue fire tripod away. Chapter 287. The warden frowned deeply, and he looked sternly at Lu Xiuwen who was standing beside Yun Shu with a relaxed expression. Lu Xiuwen, what do you have to say about this? Lu Xiuwen took a glimpse of Yun Shu's pale face from the corner of his eyes without emotion. I have never done such a thing. The warden said, when you all returned from the mission, it was reported that Yun Shu was met with a mishap. Now that Yun Shu is still alive and accused you of murder, how are you going to explain this? Lu Xiuwen replied. Half a month ago, junior brother Yun and I went out on a mission with the rest. We did not have any conflicts on the journey. I was with other teammates from the start to the end and did not have any chance to attack junior brother Yun. Junior brother Yun was lost from the group when we were killing the demonic beast. After the demonic beast was slaughtered, junior brother Yun was missing, and we searched the forest for a long time but only saw his blood-stained clothes, so we thought junior brother Yun was murdered. Then, Lu Xiuwen turned to look at the furious Yun Shu and said calmly, I do not understand why junior brother Yun would accuse me as his murderer as well. Please clear my name, warden. Lu Xiuwen spoke neither hurriedly nor slowly, and there was neither panic nor guilt in his tone. At that sight, the disciples surrounding outside the disciplinary hall could not help but start whispering. Yun Shu and Lu Xiuwen were the most gifted out of the new disciples, and their skills were around the same level. However, these two new talents were involved in this incident, and many were interested to watch on. Lu Xiuwen is born in the formidable Heavens Royals. What kind of treasures has he not seen before? He shouldn't go as far as to snatch a Shangyue fire tripod, right? What do you know? That Shangyue fire turpo is the best cultivation mystical artifact for Khanate level 9s. It can speed up one's cultivation rapidly. Who doesn't want it? There was originally a slight difference between Lu Xiuwen and Yun Shu's skills, and if one of them obtained the Shangyue fire tripod, that person would definitely be able to get way ahead of the other person. This item is, thus, obviously a treasure. The warden frowned slightly and said to Yun Shu, you said that Lu Xiuwen deliberately led you away. Is there anyone who can testify for you? Yun Shu frowned. After thinking for a while, his eyes scanned through the crowd and saw Su Wan standing amongst the people. When Su Wan met with Yun Shu's eyes, her eyes flickered a little, and she pursed her lips. When Lu Xiuwen called me, an outer sect disciple, Su Wan was nearby as well, Yun Shu said slowly. The warden pondered for a moment and called Su Wan up. The disciples were struck by a thought when they saw Su Wan going forward. In this period of time, Su Wan and Yun Shu were very close, and there were already rumors about both of them in the outer sect. Now that Yun Shu called Su Wan up to testify for him, everyone could not help but guess that Su Wan would definitely stand against Lu Xiuwen given her affection for Yun Shu. Su Wan greets warden, Su Wan said gently. The warden nodded. Did you see Lu Xiuwen and Yun Shu leaving together that day? Su Wan's lips were slightly pursed. She took a glance of Yun Shu's expectant face and looked back. After remaining silent for a while, she finally said, the battle was very intense at that time. I was focused on attacking the demonic beast, so I never took any notice of it. With that, everyone was stunned. Chapter 288, Don't Su Wan and Yun Shu have a thing for each other? Why did she say such a thing here? Since Su Wan said so, I think that Yun Shu's words most likely cannot be trusted. After all, junior sister Su has always adored Yun Shu, and if such a thing really happened, would junior sister Su deny it? Su Wan's words made many felt that Yun Shu was slandering Lu Xiuwen intentionally. Everyone knew of Su Wan and Yun Shu's relationship. If there truly were such a thing, Su Wan would definitely stand on Yun Shu's side. However, a hint of satisfaction flashed across Lu Xiuwen's eyes. Yun Shu widened his eyes in disbelief and looked at Su Wan, who was avoiding his eyes. Whatever he said earlier was not a lie. When Lu Xiuwen called him, he clearly exchanged a look with Su Wan, and she did see him leaving together with Lu Xiuwen. Why was it that, at this very moment, Su Wan denied everything? Yun Shu simply could not believe that Su Wan, who had always followed him throughout these days, would backstab him at this critical moment. Su Wan did not return Yun Shu's gaze and only looked down to avoid everything. She did witness Lu Xiuwen and Yun Shu leaving together, but, so what? Yun Shu was already crippled now. While Lu Xiuwen. Su Wan looked up at Lu Xiuwen's back view, and her mind replayed the scene where Lu Xiuwen expressed his affection for her on their way back to the sect. Lu Xiuwen was a royal from the formidable Heaven's Royals, and his identity was as prestigious as Yun Shu's. Now, Yun Shu had become disabled while Lu Xiuwen had a bright future ahead of him. Yun Shu stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. His last ray of hope was shattered the moment Su Wan spoke. A hint of laughter darted across Lu Xiuwen's eyes. Then, he looked at the pale Yun Shu and said, Junior brother Yun, I know that you suffered a lot this time, and I am very upset as well, but I don't know why must you malign me like this. Then, Lu Xiuwen showed a pained expression. Lu Xiuwen, when did I malign you? How can you? Yun Shu trembled in fury when he saw Lu Xiuwen's attitude, and blood flowed out from the cut that was not yet healed. Su Wan's words simply pushed Yun Shu into a bottomless abyss. No matter how he explained now, no one would believe him. Lu Xiuwen looked at the warden and added on. Warden, all the disciples who participated in this mission can testify that I never left the group by myself. Then, those disciples who were standing aside nodded along. Yun Shu looked at the farce before his eyes and let out a bitter laugh. A drop of blood escaped his mouth as he shut his eyes in pain. The warden frowned slightly. Yun Shu had violated the sect rules by maligning Lu Xiuwen. Yun Shu, what do you still have to say now? Yun Shu shook his head slowly. Everyone was testifying for Lu Xiuwen, and no one would believe him at all no matter how he explained. Human or devil, he finally saw clearly. The warden announced coldly. For maligning a fellow disciple in the sect, you are to be flogged 30 strokes. On the account that your injuries are severe, you are to head to the disciplinary hall by yourself to receive the punishment once you recover. Yes, Yun Shu said with a bitter laugh. The smile in Lu Ziyuan's eyes deepened. Warden, I have something to report. Suddenly, a beautiful female voice traveled into everyone's ears. Chapter 289. Everyone looked up instinctively and saw that Yi Qingtang was at disciplinary hall. Lu Xiuwen narrowed his eyes upon seeing Yi Qingtang. Yun Shu looked in confusion at Yi Qingtang, who suddenly arrived. Are you here to say anything about Yun Shu's matter? The warden asked. The warden's words reflected what many thought. While Yi Qingtang did not interact much with Yun Shu during this period of time, Yi Qingtang was still on good terms with him previously. Now that Yun Shu was in trouble, could it be that Yi Qingtang was here to help him? Lu Xiuwen swept his eyes across Yi Qingtang, though he was not at all bothered. Yi Qingtang never participated in the mission with them, so no matter what she said now, Yun Shu's fate would hardly change. However, senior brother Yun's matter? Yi Qingtang was slightly surprised. She scanned the disciplinary hall and could not help but laugh. You are mistaken. I am not here to talk about senior brother Yun's matter. After all, my mission was different from theirs. How would I know anything that happened in their mission? Quite a number of disciples were taken aback by her words. She was not here to save Yun Shu. The warden said, so what are you here for? Yi Qingtang slowly walked up, and when she reached the warden, she suddenly handed a sword in her hand to the warden. Warden, I picked up a sword on my way back to the sect. There is a Xianling sect symbol carved on it, and I thought that some senior brother must have lost it, so I brought it back together with me. I'm handing it to you to check if there are any clues so that the item can be returned to its original owner. Lu Ziyuan's eyes flickered when he saw that sword. The warden looked at the sword before him and took it over. When he drew out the sword, there was an obvious, large patch of dried blood stained on the shiny sword. The warden furrowed his eyebrows. Where did you pick up this sword at? In the vicinity of Beiyue Mountains. Yi Qingtang replied. With that said, Su Wan and the rest had a shocked expression. Was that not where Yun Shu was on a mission at? Lu Ziyuan's expression became a little ugly. Beiyue Mountains. Why do I remember that the location of Lu Xiuwen and the rest's mission is around that area? A random disciple voiced from a side. Lu Ziyuan's expression instantly turned even uglier. Yi Qingtang scoffed in her heart. Catching on to what that disciple said, she looked at Lu Xiuwen and asked, Oh? Could it be that this sword belongs to senior brother Lu then? Lu Xiuwen narrowed his eyes immediately and uttered coldly. Junior sister Yi, you should not speak carelessly. What evidence do you have to say that you picked up this sword at Beiyue Mountains and that this sword is mine? The warden frowned as well. Yi Qingtang, do you have any proof? Yi Qingtang looked up, and her eyes quietly fell on the Blood Moon sect elder, who was in the crowd. Senior brother Zhou should have seen this sword as well. She immediately darted the Blood Moon sect elder a look, signaling him to say something. The Blood Moon sect elder saw Yi Qingtang's eyes and pursed his lips. What had it got to do with him? Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes slightly as her right hand casually held on the sword on her waist and drew it out a little. The Blood Moon sect elder felt a chill. He cursed in his heart and walked up rather unwillingly. Chapter 290. When Lu Xiuwen saw the Blood Moon sect elder who became Zhou Chu, a hint of laughter emerged in his eyes. This Yi Qingtang was really an idiot. Everyone knew about the enmity between Zhou Chu and Yi Qingtang. Plus, Zhou Chu obviously had an intention of cozying up to him on the arena previously. Calling Zhou Chu up right now would probably just be more of a hindrance than help. Then, Lu Xiuwen secretly sighed and said to the Blood Moon sect elder, it would be even better if senior brother Zhou was present. Please clear my name, senior brother Zhou. Under Yi Qingtang's threatening eyes, the Blood Moon sect elder nodded with a smile and said with an expression which read absolutely, no problem. Don't worry, junior brother Lu. I will definitely say the truth in all honesty. Lu Xiaowen nodded in satisfaction and glanced at Yi Qingtang with a cold laugh in his eyes. The Blood Moon sect elder walked up to the warden and said, Warden, I have something to report. Say. The warden uttered. After taking a look at the sword, the Blood Moon sect elder turned to look at Lu Xiaowen, who secretly gave him a nod. I indeed witnessed junior sister Yi picking this sword up in the area near Beiyue Mountains. Lu Xiaowen's expression immediately fell after hearing what the Blood Moon sect elder said. Then, the Blood Moon sect elder continued. I also saw junior brother Lu using this sword before. Lu Xiaowen's expression darkened instantly, and he frowned. Senior brother Zhou, don't speak carelessly. Then, he cast a threatening look to the Blood Moon sect elder. The Blood Moon sect elder was simply unaffected. I am not speaking carelessly. I did see you holding this sword before. Lu Xiaowen's expression turned ugly. On the other hand, Yi Qingtang deliberately looked at Lu Xiaowen in surprise. This sword really belongs to senior brother Lu. But, the blood stain on this sword, the warden's expression changed, and he immediately summoned someone to compare the blood stain on that sword and Yunshu's blood. The results shocked everyone. The two blood samples were completely the same, and evidently, the blood on the sword belonged to Yunshu. When the results were revealed, Lu Xiaowen's expression became extremely ugly. He did attack Yunshu, but he did not use that sword at all. He clearly placed that sword in his room all this while and had never used it, but why was it that it was in Yi Qingtang's hands now? Lu Xiaowen really fell into a dire situation as his own sword was stained with Yunshu's blood. Then, he said, this sword is indeed mine. However, I already lost it 1 month ago, so I am really unaware of this matter. Unaware? Yi Qingtang suddenly laughed. She narrowed her eyes at Lu Xiaowen, who was trying hard to wash his hands off everything. That is really unusual then. Senior brother Lu, your sword is stained with senior brother Yun's blood, and senior brother Yun said that he was injured by you. I'm afraid there's something hidden in this matter. Lu Xiaowen glimpsed at Yi Qingtang and could not help but curse internally, though he did not show any expression on his face. All the disciples who went on the mission can testify for me that I did not bring this sword when I went out on the mission. The warden then interrogated other disciples, and the outcome was the same as what Lu Xiaowen said. Even Yunshu could not help but frown as well. He was injured by Lu Xiaowen's sword, but it was completely not the one that Yi Qingtang handed to the warden. However, at that moment, Yunshu was not foolish enough to speak up for Lu Xiaowen. Chapter 291. There were many discussions among the disciples, and the warden's expression turned solemn as well. If Lu Xiaowen really harmed Yunshu, his offense would be serious, but using this sword as evidence was not sufficient. Yi Qingtang took in everyone's expression quietly, and her lips curled into a smile. She walked forward and said, I think what senior brother Lu said should be real. Yi Qingtang's words surprised everyone. What was going on? Yi Qingtang actually spoke up for Lu Xiaowen. Lu Xiaowen was a little surprised as well, completely not understanding what Yi Qingtang was planning to do. Yi Qingtang smiled. I believe that given senior brother Lu's character, he would not do such a despicable thing. If he really did it, wouldn't it bring shame to the entire formidable heavens royals? Someone who could do such a lowly thing that's worse than pigs or dogs is definitely a scoundrel. Although Yi Qingtang's words were helping Lu Xiaowen, they sounded piercing to him. Despicable? Bring shame to the formidable heavens royals? Worse than pigs or dogs? If not for the fact that it was unsuitable to argue right now, Lu Xiaowen really wanted to rip Yi Qingtang's mouth apart. That scumbag was simply using this opportunity to criticize him. Yet, even if he knew that, Lu Xiaowen could only suffer in silence. You're reading on BOXNOVEL. Com. Thanks. Senior Brother Lu previously said that he did not lose this sword, and given Senior Brother Yun's character, I believe that he will not malign a fellow disciple. Thus, it is very possible that someone wanted to sow discord. After stealing Senior Brother Lu's sword, the person pretended to be Senior Brother Lu, deliberately tricked Senior Brother Yun, and took the chance to attack him. Ultimately, Senior Brother Lu should be innocent. Yi Qingtang behaved contrary to her usual attitude towards Lu Xiaowen as she helped Lu Xiaowen to prove his innocence, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Lu Xiaowen, whose face was pale, was also worried that he would be accountable for the matter regarding the sword and could only go along with Yi Qingtang. What junior sister Yi said is definitely the case. There must be some bastard who deliberately sowed discord between junior brother Yun and me by pretending to be me and injuring junior brother Yun. This sword must have been stolen by that bastard. The warden frowned and nodded after thinking that it made sense. Who knew? However, Yi Qingtang suddenly added on. Although Senior Brother Lu is not really related to this incident, it was his sword that hurt Senior Brother Yun. He did not keep an eye on his items well and let others have a chance to steal it. If others did not pretend to be Senior Brother Lu, Senior Brother Yun would not have fallen for it so easily. So, although Senior Brother Lu is not the murderer, he is still responsible for the crime. Lu Xiaowen was shocked, and he glared at Yi Qingtang instantly. Everything she said previously was for this moment. Although he knew that he fell for Yi Qingtang's scheme, things had already reached this point, and Lu Xiaowen could only clench his teeth. Indeed. It is all because of me that junior brother Yun suffered such a disaster. I am willing to be punished. The warden said. Lu Xiaowen did not safe-keep his items well and caused his weapon to fall in others' hands. Although you did not personally injure Yun Shu, he was attacked using your weapon. You're exempted from the death penalty but not from punishment. You are to be flogged 50 strokes. This small punishment will stop you from making even bigger mistakes in the future. As fellow disciples in the same sect, you all should support each other and not let outsiders have a chance to exploit any of your flaws. Once the warden finished his sentence, Lu Ziyuan's face turned miserably pale immediately. 50 strokes of flogging, that could tear one's skin and flesh. However, up to that point, he could only clench his teeth and swallow this ill consequence. Chapter 292 Lu Xiaowen had to receive his punishment right there and then. 2 disciples walked into the hall, each holding a rod of discipline that was 2 meters long and 10 fingers wide. Lu Xiaowen was pressed down on the floor, and the 2 rods hit his bottom unsparingly. Suddenly, a loud clack was heard. The disciplinary hall was dead silent. Everyone widened their eyes and stared as the rod of discipline landed. Lu Ziyuan's good-looking face paled from the pain, and cold sweat ran down his face. Su Wan, who was standing aside, was so shocked by the sound of flesh being torn that she turned pale. She tugged onto the ends of her clothes nervously. Even the strongest and toughest fist faction disciple would not be able to get out of bed for 2 to 3 months after being flogged 50 strokes. While Lu Ziyuan's natural endowments were pretty good, the time he spent on cultivation was still short. After just 20 strokes, the skin and flesh on his bottom were already torn, and the area was dripping with blood. Every time the blood-stained rod landed, blood spattered everywhere and dripped onto the floor. It was a horrifying sight. Yi Qingtang looked on coldly. There was no emotion in her eyes as she watched Lu Ziyuan's face turning purple from being beaten. That excruciating pain caused Lu Ziyuan's mind to buzz. As the prince of the formidable heavens royals, he had never suffered such a violent beating. His veins popped out as cold sweat trickled down continuously. His pale lips were bleeding from his bite. Looking up furiously, he glared at Yi Qingtang, who was faintly smiling with hatred. If Yi Qingtang had not suddenly appeared, he would not need to suffer such humiliation in public. 50 strokes were finished, and Lu Ziyuan's bottom was already terribly battered. Blood covered the floor, and his legs that were soaked with blood could not stop trembling. Senior brother Lu, this is also a lesson learned. In the future, you must definitely keep a close eye on your belongings and not let anyone have an opportunity to exploit your inadequacy to their advantage. Yi Qingtang looked at the pale Lu Xiuwen with a seeming smile. Lu Ziyuan's teeth chattered due to the pain. Scowling at Yi Qingtang, he said in a raspy voice, "I will definitely remember this lesson for life." The toughest time had already passed. He would definitely not let Yi Qingtang off easily. The days were still long, and he would definitely have a chance to torture her. He would not suffer this 50 strokes of flogging for nothing. There was already a conclusion to the incident today, and the Shangyue fire tripod was already in his hands. Once he recovered, he would use that Shangyue fire tripod to cultivate for a period of time and would definitely become the best in Xianling sect's outer sect. Although he suffered, it was worth it. Yi Qingtang straightened herself and suddenly turned to the warden, who was seated in the center of the hall. "Warden, Senior Brother Lu is ultimately not the murderer, and now that Senior Brother Lu has already received his punishment, it should be enough. However, the real villain is the murderer who injured Senior Brother Yun." Once Yi Qingtang said that, Lu Xiuwen, who was paralyzed on the floor, was shocked. He faintly sensed that Yi Qingtang definitely had another move at the back. Indeed. Such a scourge must not be connived in the outer sect. The warden nodded. A hint of laughter passed Yi Qingtang's eyes. Since this person could steal Senior Brother Lu's sword and attack Senior Brother Yun during the mission, it must be a new disciple who participated in that mission. The Shangyue fire tripod that was stolen away must be hidden by that person. Please order people to search the rooms and space rings of all the disciples who took part in this mission. I believe the location of where the item is hidden in will be found very quickly. Once found, the identity of the murderer would naturally be revealed. Chapter 293, Yi Qingtang's words struck Lu Ziyuan's mind like a bolt of lightning. Lu Xiuwen looked up in disbelief and glared at Yi Qingtang. His eyes were full of hatred as though he wanted to swallow her down alive. The Shangyue fire tripod was hidden in his room. If Yi Qingtang requested the warden to conduct a search right now, would he not? Lu Xiuwen broke out in a cold sweat instantly, and the luck he previously felt vanished into thin air. Once the Shangyue fire tripod was found to be hidden in his room, things would not be as simple as being flogged 50 strokes. He might not even be able to enter Xianling sect for the rest of his life anymore. At that instant, Lu Xiuwen finally realized what Yi Qingtang was plotting when she said those words previously. She was clearing his name on the surface, but in reality, she was making him pay back in his own coin by slowly leading him to limit the scope of the murderer to the disciples who participated in this mission. He would not be able to keep the Shangyue fire tripod anymore, and he suffered this 50 strokes for nothing. Lu Xiuwen had never hated someone this much. At that very instant, he really wished he could tear Yi Qingtang into pieces. "I will send people to investigate immediately. This matter will end here for now. If the murderer is found, he will definitely be punished severely," the warden ordered. After watching the drama and being shocked by the bloody 50 strokes of flogging, the disciples did not dare to speak further and quickly dispersed. Lu Xiuwen was carried away by a few disciples, and before he left, he glared at Yi Qingtang resentfully as though his eyes were soaked in poison. Yi Qingtang simply could not be bothered with Lu Xiuwen and immediately walked to Yun Shu's side to support him. "Junior sister Yi," Yun Shu grasped Yi Qingtang's wrists tightly. Agitation filled his eyes. He was very aware that if not for Yi Qingtang's timely appearance, not only would he not be able to punish Lu Xiuwen for his crime, he would even be accused of maligning a fellow disciple instead. Yi Qingtang chuckled. Since others were present, she did not say anything and only helped Yun Shu out. Once they exited the disciplinary hall, Yun Shu could not conceal his gratitude anymore. "Junior sister Yi, thank you for standing up for me today. If not for you, I'm afraid," Yi Qingtang shook her head. "Senior Brother Yun, there's no need for formalities between us. I am clear of what Lu Xiaowen did, but it's a pity that there is no concrete evidence for the warden to convict him, and I could only use wits to resolve your hatred temporarily. Yun Shu laughed bitterly. I really did not expect Lu Xiaowen to be so vicious and have such wild ambitions. I am to blame for not being able to see his true colors. But, where did you pick up the sword that you took out just now? I've never seen Lu Xiaowen use it before. Yi Qingtang scanned her surroundings, and after ensuring that there was no outsider present, she said softly, I didn't even pick up that sword. I went to Lu Ziyuan's room to steal it before I went to the disciplinary hall. Yun Shu was stunned. Steal. Yi Qingtang nodded. Lu Xiaowen must have been certain enough to dare to attack you. I know that there's no way you could win him in the disciplinary hall, so I made a trip to his room first. The blood on it was smeared using your blood-stained clothes as well. Yun Shu was completely dumbfounded. Never had he thought that Yi Qingtang would be so bold and detailed to set up this trap for Lu Xiaowen to fall in. Chapter 294, Senior Brother Yun, don't worry. I will not let Lu Xiaowen off so easily. I will definitely make him personally return the Shangyue fire tripod that he stole. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes, which turned cold. At this point, Yun Shu finally realized how complicated Yi Qingtang's plan was. Ultimately, leading the warden to order a search would definitely off Lu Ziyuan's last glimmer of hope in keeping the Shangyue fire tripod. Yun Shu was extremely grateful to Yi Qingtang. If he was able to have the Shangyue fire tripod back, his future could, perhaps, be saved. After walking Yun Shu back, Yi Qingtang then returned to her room. Su Wan was also in the room at that time. When she saw Yi Qingtang, her eyes could not help but avert away. While Yi Qingtang did not say anything, Su Wan felt like she was sitting on pins and needles. Just a while later, she immediately left the room. Yi Qingtang saw how Su Wan left in a flurry and scoffed internally. She walked into the room and touched the silver wolf's fur, bearing this grudge in her heart. Regardless of Lu Xiaowen or the betrayer Su Wan, she would not let any off. You're back, junior sister Yi. Lin Long could not hold back her smile when she saw Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang said, how do you feel, senior sister Lin? I've recovered a lot. Lin Long chuckled and asked, what happened just now? I saw that junior sister Su's expression was not too good when she returned, and she turned even paler when you returned. Could it be that there's a conflict between you two? Lin Long did not have any good impressions of Su Wan. Yi Qingtang scoffed. Conflict? More like she has something to hide. Su Wan always clung on to Yun Shu eagerly and guarded against Yi Qingtang like the way one guarded against a thief. But when something happened to Yun Shu, Su Wan jumped into Lu Ziyuan's embrace instead. Now, Yi Qingtang finally realized why she heard rumors about Su Wan and Lu Xiaowen everywhere when she entered the sect in her past life. It seemed, these two people must have gotten together after Yun Shu's accident. Yi Qingtang's heart turned even colder when she recalled Yun Shu's injuries. With her here in this life, she wanted to see how this adulterous pair could harm her senior brother Yun anymore. The disciplinary hall warden conducted a detailed search on the disciples who participated in the mission. Just a while after the search started, the stolen Shangyue fire tripod was secretly sent back into Yun Shu's room by the thief. The Shangyue fire tripod was returned to its owner, and the search was naturally concluded without any outcome. After recuperating for a few days, Yun Shu's condition gradually improved. On the other hand, Lu Xiaowen stayed bedridden for days after being flogged 50 strokes and did not even have the energy to get out of bed, much less cultivate. As Yi Qingtang was appreciating the sight of Lu Xiaowen falling victim to his own evil deeds, Elder Qin and Elder Lin returned with a group of people. Yi Qingtang just finished her cultivation and felt that her spirit root was going to make a breakthrough to the orange grade in a few days. Then, a disciple passed on a message. Elder Qin of the inner sect Array faction summoned her over. Yi Qingtang's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately headed over. According to rules, ordinary outer sect disciples would not have any chance to meet the inner sect elders. Thus, the news of Yi Qingtang being summoned by the elder of the inner sect's sword faction attracted much attention. Yi Qingtang was led into the elder's hall by that disciple. The moment she stepped in, she was greeted with Elder Qin's smiling face. Disciple greets Elder Qin. Elder Qin was full of smiles. The more he saw Yi Qingtang, the more he favored her. When he thought of Elder Lin's expression, which was as ugly as though he ate dung, Elder Qin's mood turned even better. Chapter 295, Yi Qingtang, you played quite a huge role in the Deer City incident, and handing in the revolving soul orb is also a big contribution to the sect. Thus, the sect has decided to award you with 50,000 Xianming points, Elder Qin said with a smile. 50,000 Xianming points. Delight filled her when she heard this number. The hundreds of Xianming points she had on hand was already a huge asset in the outer sect. Thousands of Xianming points was simply a massive amount in the outer sect. Although Yi Qingtang was elated, she still did not forget her goal for heading to Deer City. She immediately suppressed her happiness and said, I am very happy to receive a reward from the sect. However, I have a request to make, and I am unsure whether you will approve of it. Oh. What is it? Elder Qin asked curiously. Yi Qingtang replied. I wish to participate in the inner sect assessment which takes place half a month from now. After Elder Qin heard Yi Qingtang's words, the smile on his face vanished in shock. You want to participate in the inner sect assessment which takes place half a month from now? Astonishment was written all over Elder Qin's face. Although he felt that Yi Qingtang had a good nature, she was ultimately only a new disciple with a red spirit root. She had only entered Xianling's sect for a few months and probably did not have a solid foundation in the outer sect, yet she wanted to take part in Xianling sect's inner sect assessment. Was she insane? Yes. Yi Qingtang replied firmly. There was a huge difference between the inner and outer sect, and only by entering the inner sect would she be able to narrow her distance with Yi Yu. Right before Zhou Chu died, he already pointed out that Yi Yu colluded with Xianling sect's inner sect disciple, Ning Luo, to kill her. If she wasted any more time with the outer sect disciples, she would never be able to exact revenge on Yi Yu. Elder frowned slightly and had a look of disapproval. Yi Qingtang, although your spirit root is inferior, you are rather intelligent. With your nature, you would still need to practice for years to enter the inner sect. Even if I make an exception and allow you to participate in the inner sect assessment now, there is probably not much meaning. Why don't you think about it again? Elder Qin really thought highly of Yi Qingtang, but he still thought it was risky to take such rash actions. However, Yi Qingtang shook her head insistently. I don't have any other requests. I only wish for a chance to participate in the assessment. Elder Qin never expected Yi Qingtang to be this stubborn and sighed helplessly. As a new disciple in the outer sect, you basically have no qualifications to take part in this year's inner sect assessment. If you really want to, there is also a way as well. However, you must use 30,000 Xianming points to exchange for a qualification to participate. You must think carefully. If you really want to enter the inner sect, you can wait another year, and you will not need to spend this 30,000 Xianming points. Elder Qin tried to persuade her kindly. 30,000 Xianming points was not a small amount. If Yi Qingtang was willing to give up on the inner sect assessment this time, she could save 30,000 Xianming points and use them to exchange for other items, as well as make great improvements in this 1 year. I have thought about it clearly. Please exchange it for me, Elder Qin. Elder Qin's lips twitched slightly. He had seen a stubborn person before but never one this stubborn. This girl is too willful. Forget it. Since you're so insistent on this, I will not persuade you anymore. However, since you wish to participate in this year's assessment, you must start preparing as quickly as possible. There is a spirit consonance river in the sect. If you really want to stake everything on this attempt, you can exchange some points for a few hours of usage rights in the Spirit Consonance River. It is rich in spirit energy, which can accelerate your cultivation, and will be suitable for you. Chapter 296, Spirit Consonance River. Yi Qing Tang did hear of this name in her previous lifetime. That was basically a land of spirit energy that only inner sect disciples could afford to use. The effects of cultivating in there were completely incomparable to cultivating in normal places. Even if one were to spend half a month cultivating in other ordinary places, it was impossible for the effect to be better than 2 hours of cultivation in the Spirit Consonance River. It was indeed a good spot to upgrade herself rapidly. Elder Qin saw that Yi Qing Tang was tempted and added on immediately. However, the Spirit Consonance River is reserved for Xianling sect's inner sect disciples to use. If outer sect disciples wish to use the Spirit Consonance River, they must pay 5,000 Xianming points for every 2 hours of usage. You must think carefully. 5,000 Xianming points. Yi Qing Tang was slightly shocked. It should be known that inner sect disciples only needed to pay 1,000 Xianming points for every 2 hours of usage, while outer sect disciples had to pay 5 times the amount. It could be said that the best conditions for cultivation were concentrated in the inner sect and were simply treasures that outer sect disciples could not think of. Yi Qing Tang was still at Khanate level 7 and was 2 levels away from the peak in the outer sect, Khanate level 9. Her spirit root was about to improve, and if she could use the Spirit Consonance River to upgrade herself in this period of time, perhaps there was hope to successfully advance to Khanate level 9. To enter Xianling sect's inner sect, one had to be the top 3 disciples in the outer sect, and those 3 people were definitely at Khanate level 9. Yi Qing Tang could only go all out if she wanted to enter Xianling sect's inner sect in the shortest time possible. I will head to the Spirit Consonance River to exchange for 6 hours of usage later, Yi Qing Tang said. Elder Qin nodded slightly. Right after 50,000 Xianming points were gained, more than half of it was already spent. Subtracting the 15,000 Xianming points for the Spirit Consonance River, Yi Qing Tang only had 5,000 Xianming points left. And once she entered the inner sect, her spending would become even bigger. However, Yi Qing Tang would definitely not be thrifty on these matters. Earning Xianming points was to make oneself more powerful, and, obviously, spending it would be useful. Thousands of Xianming points were drawn away immediately. Elder Qin's heart was complicated when he looked at Yi Qing Tang. He always felt that Yi Qing Tang was not like ordinary new disciples and had always been very steady. Yet, unexpectedly, she was actually very bold this time. The Xianming points have been drawn away. Half a month later, you can head for the inner sect assessment directly, Elder Qin said. Yi Qing Tang nodded. After thanking Elder Qin, she left the Elder's Hall. The moment Yi Qing Tang left, the Elder from the outer sect's array faction walked into the Elder's Hall. He had heard everything Yi Qing Tang said from a dark corner and was, similarly, shocked by Yi Qing Tang's wild act. Elder Qin, wasn't Yi Qing Tang a little too insane? Why didn't you persuade her? The outer sect elder frowned. Elder Qin shook his head helplessly. I did persuade her, but you saw the results as well. Yi Qing Tang is not like ordinary disciples. She has her own plans. Although this is insane, one cannot help but be expectant. Elder Qin watched Yi Qing Tang's fading back with an anticipating look. If Yi Qing Tang really passes the inner sect assessment this year, many jaws would drop, commented the outer sect elder. Elder Qin nodded. If she really has such an ability, I really have to pay attention to her. The 2 elders smiled at each other, but both thought that such a possibility was almost zero. Chapter 297. After leaving the Elder's Hall, Yi Qing Tang had a plan for the future. Although over 40,000 Xianming points were spent, her heart did not ache. She made a plan for the inner sect assessment happening half a month later. There were still over 5,000 Xianming points, and perhaps, it was enough for her to choose some weapons she liked in the Xianming pavilion. At that thought, Yi Qingtang could not help but recall the sword that the young Wind Moon sect disciple dropped. Although she only used it for a while, the feel of it really amazed her. If she could obtain a similar weapon, she would have a higher chance of passing the upcoming inner sect assessment. After making up her mind, Yi Qingtang headed to the Xianming Pavilion straight away. There were countless rare and valuable items in the Xianming Pavilion. Anything one could think of could be obtained in this pavilion, and as long as one had enough Xianming points to pay, they could acquire the items they liked. In her previous life, Yi Qingtang never went to the Xianming Pavilion. Most of the Xianming points that she accumulated with great difficulty were used to exchange for Shi spirit pills, and she did not have any extra Xianming points to spend in the Xianming Pavilion. There were quite a few disciples in the Xianming Pavilion at that time, and everyone was searching for a treasure they were attracted to. The moment Yi Qingtang entered the Xianming Pavilion, she saw a familiar figure. Junior Sister Yi. Dai Changming was in the pavilion with a handsome youth and came up to greet Yi Qingtang when he suddenly saw her walking in. Senior Brother Dai. Yi Qingtang nodded as she took a casual glance at the youth beside Dai Changming. The youth had thick eyebrows and beautiful eyes. He was extremely good-looking and had a remarkable disposition. While he was standing aside silently, his extraordinary charisma was unable to be concealed. Ji Xianyuan. Yi Qingtang raised a brow slightly. The man beside Dai Changming was called Ji Xianyuan. When Yi Qingtang entered Xianling sect in her previous lifetime, Ji Xianyuan was already an inner sect disciple. Moreover, he had superb endowments and was thought highly of by the elders. Are you here to exchange for treasures as well? What a coincidence, I'm here today with senior brother Ji to collect a spirit animal, Dai Changming said with a smile. Because of the Deer City incident previously, Dai Changming felt a sense of gratitude towards Yi Qingtang. Ji Xianyuan, from aside, scanned Yi Qingtang without any emotions. The Xianming Pavilion was divided into 9 areas, and the items that could be exchanged in each area were different. Some areas had spirit pills and miraculous herbs while others had rare treasures and spirit animals. Divine weapons were all the more in great quantities, and even some mystic technique scriptures could be found here. However, it was just that the number of Xianming points required was huge, and there were few outer sect disciples who had the ability to exchange for these treasures. The sight could not help but pique the curiosity of other disciples in the pavilion. Dai Changming was the 10th elite disciple on the ranking charts, while Ji Xianyuan, whom everyone knew, was ranked first in the outer sect and topped the ranking chart. These two people could be said to have a certain influence in the outer sect, and they rarely interacted with other disciples. Yet, unexpectedly, one of them actually initiated a conversation with this young new disciple today. It is a coincidence indeed. Yi Qingtang chuckled. As they were speaking, the warden of Xianming Pavilion walked over with a huge metal cage being pushed out by 2 workers behind him. Once everyone saw that metal cage, gasps erupted. Chapter 298. In the metal cage was a giant lion, which was moving about in the cage irritably. Under the light, its golden fur was exceptionally dazzling. Its 4 strong paws revealed sharp claws which could easily tear everything apart. Ji Xianyuan, this is the scorching sun lion cub that you ordered, the warden said to Ji Xianyuan. All the disciples were dumbfounded. The scorching sun lion was famous for its ferocity and had extremely high combat ability. The scorching sun lion in the metal cage was near 2 meters tall and 3 meters long, giving off a majestic appearance. However, this was still a cub. A grown scorching sun lion had a body as large as a small hill, and its bite was powerful enough to break a thick slab of steel. Ordinary disciples could barely take a glimpse of the scorching sun lion, much less catch one as a spirit pet. Yet, unexpectedly, Ji Xianyuan actually exchanged one in the Xianming Pavilion. This scorching sun lion cub is seriously so majestic. If I get one, my future missions would be way easier to handle. You want to get one? Do you know how many Xianming points are needed to exchange for that scorching sun lion cub? The price starts from 10,000. Just drop the idea already. Starts from 10,000. The disciples were startled by this shocking number. For outer sect disciples like them, the number of Xianming points they obtained from missions were already insufficient for their usual usage. How could they save up thousands of Xianming points? Senior brother Ji actually has so many Xianming points. I've been in the sect for 3 years, and all my Xianming points added up isn't even this much. That is senior brother Ji, the first in the outer sect, who is even on par with some inner sect disciples. He can kill the first 100 villains on the assassination roll by himself. How can you compare to him? The disciples were extremely envious and drooled at the majestic scorching sun lion cub. There were no emotions on Ji Xianyuan's face as he received the scorching sun lion cub after taking a look at it. After obtaining the spirit pet, Ji Xianyuan had no intention of staying any longer and gave Dai Changming a look. Dai Changming immediately said to Yi Qingtang, "Junior sister Yi, we will head back first." Yi Qingtang nodded as she glanced at the scorching sun lion cub. A few years later, this scorching sun lion cub was raised by Ji Xianyuan to be extremely fierce, and it even had a ranking in the inner sect. However, such a spirit pet which exhausted one's Xianming points was not what ordinary disciples could exchange for. As the top of the ranking chart, Ji Xianyuan's abilities were naturally not to be underestimated. Ji Xianyuan and Dai Changming led the scorching sun lion cub out of Xianming Pavilion, and the onlooking disciples finally dispersed. Though they were very envious, they were well aware that they had no fate with this baby worth over 10,000 Xianming points. Yi Qingtang walked to the weapon area alone. There were many weapons displayed at the weapon area. From swords and bludgeons to bows and spears, everything was here. Yi Qingtang scanned through the weapons. When the warden saw Yi Qingtang and noticed her face, his eyes twinkled. This morning, there was news from the inner sect that a new disciple from the outer sect obtained a generous amount of Xianming points, and a portrait of that disciple was sent over as well. Was it not just this lady before his eyes? Chapter 299, What do you wish to look at? The warden asked with a rare smile. Yi Qingtang was slightly surprised but replied quickly. I wish to find a weapon that I like. The warden scanned through the weapons displayed of which each had labels indicating the price of over 100 Xianming points. Is there anything you like from here? Yi Qingtang shook her head. A smile emerged in the warden's eyes as he opened the cabinet at the back. The moment the cabinet was opened, the glistening weapons caught the eyes of many disciples, and everyone stretched their necks over, wanting to find out what exactly was happening. It should be known that there was nothing special about the items on display in the Xianming Pavilion. The real treasures were carefully kept away by the warden, and one would not even have a chance to see it if their Xianming points were insufficient. The warden took out a sword from the cabinet and placed it in front of Yi Qingtang. What do you think of this sword? The warden asked with a smile. He knew that Yi Qingtang obtained 50,000 Xianming points as a reward and thus took out treasures to recommend generously. Yi Qingtang saw a huge dragon carved on the golden scabbard of the sword. Her eyes twinkled. The sword had not been removed from its scabbard, but it already took her breath away. Clearly, it was of a totally different level from the weapons displayed outside. The warden saw the awestruck expression in Yi Qingtang's eyes and immediately drew the sword out. The moment the sword was removed from its scabbard, a dragon roar was heard, and a light suddenly blinded everyone's eyes. This sword is called the Dragon Spring Sword. It is made using first-class cold iron. The warden drew a few strokes using the sword, and although he waved the sword casually, the flashes and shadows of the sword blurred everyone's vision. Not bad, Yi Qingtang said to the point. The warden flashed a smile and then kept the sword back into its scabbard. This is nothing. There are even better ones. Then, the warden turned around and took out another sword from the cabinet. The sword was just placed before Yi Qingtang, but she already felt a warm air surging towards her. There was an image of a flame engraved on the scabbard, and it was as though the sword was wrapped in a ball of flame. Yi Qingtang's eyes brightened. The warden said, "Usually, disciples are not allowed to touch these swords. But I'll make an exception today. You can try it out." Afterward, he pushed the sword towards Yi Qingtang. The surrounding disciples gathered around her instinctively. The consecutive treasure swords being taken out had already attracted everyone's attention, and their eyes were glued on when they saw the scarlet sword. How could they be bothered about anything else anymore? Yi Qingtang held the sword. The moment the sword was in her hands, she felt a warm sensation in her palms. A confused expression flashed across her eyes as she drew the sword out of its scabbard. In an instant, it was as if a ball of flames surged out from the scabbard. The scarlet sword in Yi Qingtang's hand had a faint red glimmer around the entire sword. Blazing Flame Sword. Is that the Blazing Flame Sword? Am I seeing things? A disciple could not help but gasp when he saw the red glimmer on the sword. You can't be talking about the Blazing Flame Sword that the Fire Monarch used back then, right? Apart from that sword, what else can it be? Back then, the Fire Monarch used this Blazing Flame Sword to exterminate all the traitors. I did not expect that this Blazing Flame Sword was actually in our sect. Chapter 300. The disciples really widened their horizons today. The treasures that outer sect disciples like them saw in the Xianming Pavilion were only the tip of the iceberg, and being able to see the legendary Blazing Flame Sword today really astonished them. Yi Qingtang looked at the Blazing Flame Sword in her hand with twinkling eyes. Although she felt that this sword was really good, the sword had a fire nature and was rather unsuitable for her. The warden sharply sensed the regret that passed Yi Qingtang's eyes and raised a brow. He thought that Yi Qingtang was perhaps still unsatisfied. Thinking of the 50,000 Xianming points in her hands, he made up his mind and walked to the cabinet beside. He stretched his hand to take down a dusty, long brocade box from the top of the cabinet. Although that Blazing Flame Sword is good, it does not hold a candle to this item. A truly good item is laying inside this box. As he spoke, he lightly knocked on the brocade box that had been tightly shut for a long time while looking at Yi Qingtang meaningfully. With that said, many disciples were attracted over. To them, the Blazing Flame Sword was already extremely precious, yet the warden actually said that the item in the box was 100 times more precious than the Blazing Flame Sword. What exactly was it? How could it be this powerful? The disciples widened their eyes at that moment, fearful that they would miss out on the chance to see an unparalleled divine weapon should they be the slightest distracted. Yi Qingtang was at a loss of whether to cry or laugh when she saw the warden's behavior and speculated that he was aware of her net worth for him to show her 3 treasures so generously. The warden slowly opened the box in front of everyone. He only lifted the lid a little, but a cold air quietly seeped out through that small gap. Yi Qingtang's eyes dilated slightly in shock. She faintly sensed an unusual aura being slowly emitted out from the brocade box. As the brocade box was opened, the surrounding disciples widened their eyes as well, wanting to see what kind of rare treasure was being kept in it. When the brocade box was fully opened, everyone was taken aback by its content. In the simple and gorgeous brocade box laid an unattractive long, black sword. Its scabbard was made using an uncertain material which caused its dull appearance. Compared to the previous Dragon Spring Sword and the Blazing Flame Sword, the sword in the box seemed rather old. What is this sword? There seems to be nothing special about it. A disciple could not help but mumble. The warden looked up and scoffed at that mumbling disciple. Nothing special. The disciple looked down, not daring to utter another sentence. The warden looked back down at the black sword and slowly took it out from the brocade box. Yi Qingtang noticed that when the warden held the sword, the cold air lingering around the black sword gradually crept up to the warden's hand. The warden looked at the black sword and then at Yi Qingtang. Have you heard of Qi Shui, the invincible slayer? Yi Qingtang was stunned. Qi Shui, the invincible slayer? The warden smiled. 100 years ago, Qi Shui was born, and he was named the Slayer, as there was bloodshed everywhere he went. Many mighty figures were slaughtered by him, and their skulls were hung on his carriage. Death was in the air for a century. The sword he used is called the demonic blood sword and is one of the rare demonic weapons on earth. Chapter 301. As the warden spoke slowly, the cold air which extended up his hand caused his hand to lose color. He quickly put the black sword back into the brocade box and looked at that disciple who spoke carelessly. You actually said that there is nothing special about the demonic blood sword of the invincible slayer, Qi Shui. If it were 100 years ago, you would have been slaughtered by this demonic blood sword. That disciple felt a chill down his spine. Never would he have expected that the old and simplistic black sword would actually be the legendary demonic blood sword. Even after 100 years later, the name Qi Shui, the invincible slayer, still circulated in the world. The thought of his heinous, bloody crimes was enough to cause goosebumps. Many outer sect disciples, at least 9,000, like that disciple died under the demonic blood sword. Compared to Qi Shui, the invincible slayer, the owner of the previous blazing flame sword was simply nothing. Yi Qingtang stared at the demonic blood sword which was laying in the brocade box. Although she had not touched it for herself, she could already feel a fierce demonic air radiating from the sword such that the surrounding temperature dropped. This demonic blood sword is very precious, and its price is immeasurable. In the Xianming Pavilion, it would require at least 100,000 Xianming points, the warden said. 100,000. The disciples' jaws fell upon hearing such an expensive price. 100,000 Xianming points. Even if they were given 10 years, they would not be able to save up that amount. Yi Qingtang was slightly taken aback as well. Compared to the blazing flame sword and dragon spring sword, this demonic blood sword gave her a completely different feeling, so much that she felt an impulse the moment when she saw it. She needed this sword. The warden took in everyone's shocked expressions and scoffed quietly. Then, he turned to face the rather shocked Yi Qingtang and said, "This is a good sword, and it lives up to the price of 100,000 Xianming points." However, the warden spoke from another perspective. Although this sword is good, its demonic blood aura is too strong, and the user might be counterattacked by the demonic aura if careless. Thus, this sword only costs 40,000 now. The warden took this demonic blood sword out because he had already found out the number of Xianming points Yi Qingtang had. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. 40,000? The number of Xianming points that she could use now was only 5,000. The warden saw Yi Qingtang furrowing her brows and thought that she was worried about the demonic blood aura on the sword. Although there is a demonic blood aura on the sword, it has been many years, and a person whose mind is firm enough would not be counterattacked. It is definitely a steal to exchange this sword that is worth 100,000 Xianming points for just 40,000 Xianming points. This is a rare opportunity. The warden tried to entice Yi Qingtang, wanting to sell the demonic blood sword away as quickly as possible. Yi Qingtang looked at the demonic blood sword. Others were afraid that they might be counterattacked by the demonic blood sword, but she had no reason to worry at all. The heart of the demon god in her was the ultimate demonic object in the world. No matter how strong the demonic aura was, as long as the heart of the demon god was present, there was no possibility of being counterattacked. Moreover, the demonic blood sword with suppressed demonic blood aura was more than suitable for Yi Qingtang. As what the warden said, 40,000 Xianming points was extremely worth it, and it could be said that it was an extreme steal. It was just that. Where was she to obtain 40,000 Xianming points from? Chapter 302, Yi Qingtang still thought that the remaining 5,000 Xianming points was enough for her to splurge. Yet, the price of a random sword she fancied was insanely high. This Xianming Pavilion was indeed not a place that normal disciples could afford to purchase things from. 40,000 Xianming points was simply an unfathomable amount to outer sect disciples. All the disciples were, similarly, astounded by this price. Although the item was precious and could be considered to be of supreme grade, this price was still so expensive. How can outer sect disciples like us afford it? This is clearly prepared for inner sect disciples. Some outer sect disciples could not help but lament sourly. The cultivation conditions in the inner sect were originally better than the outer sects, and the inner sect disciples were more skilled and hence could take on rewarded missions that gave greater rewards. Although they knew that their abilities could not be compared to the inner sect disciples, they were bound to be bitter and envious when they saw good items which they had no chance of obtaining. The warden glanced at the disciples and said without emotion, "It is not that there's no chance at all. If you want to exchange some treasures in Xianming Pavilion, using Xianming points is not the only method." "What other methods are there?" The disciples were immediately on alert. The warden smiled. "If you all can obtain first place in the inner sect assessment, you can choose any item priced below 50,000 Xianming points in the Xianming Pavilion regardless of whether it is a weapon, spirit pet, or mystic technique scroll. As long as you have the abilities, there is a chance for you to obtain it directly." The warden's words were like a pail of ice water that instantly extinguished the disciples' newly arose enthusiasm. First in the inner sect entrance assessment. Forget it. They could not even enter the ranking charts, much less placing first in the inner sect assessment. Just thinking of the skills of Ji Xianyuan, who was currently ranked first in the ranking charts, everyone dropped the idea. Senior brother Ji is at the peak of Khanate level 9 right now and is only a step away from the martial chi stage. There is almost no difference between him and the inner sect disciples. Who can defeat him? In everyone's eyes, Ji Xianyuan was sure to place first in the inner sect entrance assessment, and there was no difference between having a chance to exchange for a good item in the Xianming Pavilion or not. As everyone sighed dejectedly, Yi Qingtang took these words to heart. Her eyes narrowed slightly and twinkled as she looked at the demonic blood sword. To enter the inner sect, she had to be the top 3 in the inner sect assessment, and if she wanted to obtain this demonic blood sword without spending any Xianming points, the only way was to place first. The warden did not bother with those outer sect disciples at all and only promoted the demonic blood sword to Yi Qingtang. Yet, he did not know that Yi Qingtang only had 5,000 Xianming points currently. How is it? This demonic blood sword is pretty good, isn't it? The warden laughed. Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. Just as the warden thought Yi Qingtang would exchange for the demonic blood sword, Yi Qingtang suddenly turned and left. The warden was a little dumbfounded. What was going on? She clearly liked it a lot, yet why did she leave just like that? The warden was extremely confused, but Yi Qingtang's decision to become stronger was increasingly resolute. Regardless of entering the inner sect or obtaining that demonic blood sword, Yi Qingtang was bent on achieving them. Rather than wasting time here, it was better to exchange for the usage rights of the Spirit Consonance River, as only that would truly increase her abilities. Peak of Khanate level 9, Yi Qingtang frowned as she walked out of the Xianming Pavilion. She was only at Khanate level 7 right now, and if she did not break through to Khanate level 9 in the coming half a month, there would be simply no chance of winning. Chapter 303, The Spirit Consonance River was the spot richest in spirit energy in Xianling sect and was the main area where inner sect disciples spent Xianming points on. In her previous lifetime, Yi Qingtang went to the Spirit Consonance River once before. Although it was only a brief 2 hours of cultivation, the effects were extremely astonishing. It was already so amazing when she did not have a spirit root that time, and now with a spirit root, it would go without saying that the effects would be even greater. However, although the Spirit Consonance River was good, inner sect disciples were required to pay 1,000 Xianming points for 2 hours of usage, and there were not many who could afford to use it. Yi Qingtang passed through a long aisle and reached the entrance of the Spirit Consonance River, which was situated at the back. Since teaching wardens were still giving lessons at this time, there were few disciples in the Spirit Consonance River, and only a handful of inner sect disciples walked out of the Spirit Consonance River. The warden outside the Spirit Consonance River saw someone coming and instinctively looked up. However, there was a look of surprise on his face immediately as he found it a little strange to see the young lady before him. Disciple Yi Qing Tang is here to exchange for the Spirit Consonance River's usage rights. Yi Qing Tang went forward and reported her identity. Yi Qing Tang. The warden frowned slightly as this name was foreign to him. He scanned Yi Qing Tang and asked, "Are you an outer sect disciple?" This question attracted the attention of other inner sect disciples, who could not help but look at Yi Qing Tang in surprise. Outer sect disciple? Is this a joke? Even outer sect disciples dare to exchange for the Spirit Consonance River's usage rights now? An inner sect disciple could not help but size up Yi Qing Tang. The warden frowned more deeply. He had managed the Spirit Consonance River for many years, and the number of outer sect disciples who exchanged for usage rights could be counted with a hand. Although the Spirit Consonance River was open to the entire sect, this girl. The warden lifted his chin slightly and spoke to Yi Qing Tang impatiently. Are you sure? The usage rights for the Spirit Consonance River is 1,000 Xianming points. If you are an outer sect disciple, you will need to pay 5 times that amount, totaling to 5,000 Xianming points. Do you really want to exchange? The few inner sect disciples snickered at the warden's words. Even inner sect disciples like them felt a pinch when spending 1,000 Xianming points to use the Spirit Consonance River. If outer sect disciples wanted to use the Spirit Consonance River, they had to pay 5 times the amount. And even if there were some outer sect elites who could afford 5,000 Xianming points, no one dared to squander like that. This outer sect junior sister must have been unaware of the difference between the outer sect and inner sect and thought that she only needed to spend 1,000 Xianming points to enter the Spirit Consonance River. Yi Qing Tang ignored the stares and said, "Yes, I am sure." The warden frowned and asked coldly, "How many hours do you want to exchange for then?" 6 hours. Yi Qing Tang replied. The moment she said that, the warden's face was full of surprise. 6 hours? That would require 15,000 Xianming points. How could this disciple have so many? The few inner sect disciples were a little bewildered as well. She spent 15,000 Xianming points at one go. Even inner sect disciples like them did not dare to take this move. Was this little junior sister an idiot? You have 15,000 Xianming points. The warden evidently did not believe her. Chapter 304, Yi Qing Tang did not say anything as she stretched her hand with the Xianming points bracelet to the warden. The warden looked at that bracelet doubtingly and attempted to draw the number of Xianming points required away. In the end, 15,000 Xianming points were instantly drawn away. The warden could not help but be taken aback. She really has so many points. Is it done? Yi Qing Tang asked as she placed her hand down after seeing 15,000 Xianming points being drawn away. The warden fell into a trance and only returned to his senses some time later. Yes. A few inner sect disciples heard the warden's words, and their eyes almost popped out. This junior sister from the outer sect really had 15,000 Xianming points. The warden handed Yi Qing Tang a waste tablet and finally allowed her in. Until Yi Qing Tang entered the Spirit Consonance River, the warden still could not understand where this outer sect disciple got so many Xianming points, while the inner sect disciples still had incredulous expressions on their faces. When did the outer sect produce such a crazy disciple who would actually use 5 times the price to use the Spirit Consonance River? So what if she used it? Her foundation is not stable, and it will not be easy to gain great advancements, the inner sect disciples mumbled as they left. Passing through the Spirit Consonance River entrance and stepping on the layers of clouds, one could hear the sound of flowing water in the vast expanse of white mist. A glistening stream appeared before Yi Qing Tang's eyes. The entire Spirit Consonance River was 1,000 meters long, winding between the clouds. Its aquamarine river was sparkling with tiny ripples, and threads of mist drifted above the river. At the bottom of the Spirit Consonance River were shiny gemstones embedded on the riverbed. As the river flowed, strong spirit energy was produced. Before Yi Qingtang entered the spirit consonance river, she already felt the surging spirit energy. Yi Qingtang took a step into the clear river, and a warm sensation immediately passed through her clothes and spread all over her body. Her body was clearly in the spirit consonance river, but her clothes were not wet at all. Her skin could clearly feel the river water brushing past her, but when she raised her hand, the sleeve that was previously soaked in the water was completely dry. At that time of the day, the spirit consonance river was empty, and only Yi Qingtang was in it. She looked at the end of the river flow and caught sight of a cascading spring at the semicircle river bank. Yi Qingtang's eyes brightened instantly, and she headed towards the spring without hesitation. The spirit consonance river was not deep and only reached Yi Qingtang's waist. Thus, there was no resistance when walking in the water. There was an abundance of spirit energy throughout the entire spirit consonance river, but the richest spot was the spring at the end of the river. Yi Qingtang had only gone to the spirit consonance river once in her previous life but heard some rumors about the spirit consonance river. The spring was the richest in spirit energy and had double the amount of spirit energy in other parts of the river. However, not anyone had the luck to go there. On usual days, the inner sect elites would head there early and hog the best spots. Yi Qingtang felt that she was pretty lucky today. There was not a soul here, and she would naturally not stand on ceremony. Chapter 305. When Yi Qingtang was near the spring, she could already feel wildly surging spirit energy penetrating into her body continuously. In just a short moment, the spirit root in her abdomen was burning hot and overflowing with spirit energy. Was the spirit root going to level up? Delight filled her. She had a premonition that she would definitely break through to have an orange spirit root if she stayed here for 2 hours. Even though it was only an orange spirit root, it was extremely precious to the current Yi Qingtang. As long as her spirit root succeeded in advancing one level up, there was hope for her in the future. At that thought, Yi Qingtang immediately calmed her heart down and directed her energy, allowing the constant flow of spirit energy to circulate around her whole body for her use. As Yi Qingtang cleared her mind and started cultivating, a few inner sect disciples entered the spirit consonance river one after another. Senior brother Hu, I heard that you killed one of the top 100 villains on the assassination roll a few days ago. You must have gained quite a large number of Xianming points, haven't you? Not much, it is only enough to exchange for a one-time usage right for the spirit consonance river. You only beheaded a level 7 demonic beast last month. If I were you, it would be better if you don't touch those demonic beasts. It is a waste of time and energy, and not many Xianming points can be exchanged from it. I only happened to meet it on a sect mission, so I killed it on convenience. The few inner sect disciples calmed their hearts and started their cultivation after chatting a bit. The usage rights for the spirit consonance river were rather expensive, and they did not wish to waste any time. To an inner sect disciple, a level 7 demonic beast was only a creature which could be conveniently killed, yet Gu Yanqiu and the rest, who were considered the elites in the outer sect, required a team effort of 10 people to attack a level 6 giant lizard. Clearly, the wideness of the gap between the inner sect and outer sect was unimaginable. Yi Qingtang cultivated with her mind at peace, treating their chatter as a fleeting breeze. At that time, 3 inner sect disciples entered the spirit consonance river together, and the faces of the other inner sect disciples changed when they saw these 3 people. Everyone instinctively looked at the 3 at the end of the spirit consonance river, and their expressions became even weirder when they saw a tiny figure. Senior brother Song, I am still not too familiar with the swordplay technique that the elder taught yesterday. Could you give me some guidance later? One of the 3 disciples looked at the youth who was walking in the middle. That swordplay technique is not difficult. It is just that the quality of your sword is too lousy. We will see when you exchange for a sword worth thousands in the Xianming pavilion, the youth in the middle said with an arrogant expression. That disciple nodded. He looked straight ahead and was startled to see Yi Qingtang at the spring. Senior brother Song, someone stole your cultivation spot. that disciple uttered hurriedly. Song Juanqiu frowned slightly and looked to his front. Indeed, there was an extremely foreign-looking girl cultivating at the spring. His expression turned unhappy instantly. Where did this person come from? How could she not know senior brother Song's rule of cultivating there for 2 hours every third day of the week before noon break? How dare she snatch the spot? Another disciple chipped in dissatisfaction. Song Juanqiu did not say anything and headed to the spring directly. Yi Qingtang felt that her spirit root contained sufficient spirit energy and was about to break through to an orange spirit root very soon, but she suddenly heard a piercing voice. Where did this freaking girl who doesn't keep to the rules come from? This spot is reserved by my senior brother Song. Quickly make way. Chapter 306, Yi Qingtang furrowed her brows. It was clearly the critical moment for her spirit root to make a breakthrough, but she had to hear such curses. She immediately opened her eyes and looked at that person. Other inner sect disciples cultivating in the spirit consonance river looked over immediately. What is your name? Why are you not following the rules? A disciple reproached. Rules? Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes and glanced over at the faces of the 3 uninvited people. When she saw Song Junqia's face, she could not help but scoff internally. She thought who it could be, but it was Song Juanqiu. In her previous life when she entered the inner sect, she had heard of Song Junqia's name before. Song Juanqiu was the son of an inner sect warden and thus had a certain position of influence in the inner sect. Although his natural endowment was not bad, he was domineering. She had heard that Song Juanqiu would head to the spirit consonance river at a stipulated timing and hog the spring which was the richest with spirit energy, yet she did not expect to cross paths with him today. The 2 disciples besides Song Juanqiu sized up Yi Qingtang with a frown. When they noticed that her clothes did not have an inner sect embroidery, they were shocked. I was wondering what kind of person did not know the rules and didn't expect that it'd actually be an outer sect trash, a disciple said. Song Juanqiu glimpsed at Yi Qingtang as well, and his expression became even uglier after confirming that Yi Qingtang was only an outer sect disciple. An outer sect disciple actually dared to snatch his cultivation spot. Move away, Song Juanqiu said coldly with a grim expression. Yi Qingtang scoffed coldly. On what basis? Song Junqia's face turned even uglier. On usual days, all the outer sect disciples were reverent and respectful towards inner sect disciples like them, yet, unexpectedly, this person did not know what was good for her. This is my spot. It is not a place that an outer sect disciple like you can step in carelessly. Song Juanqiu lifted his chin, and a belittling expression passed his eyes. Other onlooking disciples had surprised expressions as well. They did not notice that the girl was actually an outer sect disciple. It should be known that there were hardly any outer sect disciples in the spirit consonance river, and they had already taken this place as an exclusive right for the inner sect. Yet, unexpectedly, an outer sect disciple was actually here, and she even unluckily took Song Junqia's territory. Song Juanqiu had some connections in the inner sect, and even inner sect disciples would try not to get into conflicts with him. However, this outer sect disciple seemed to not know Song Junqia's capabilities and dared to talk back to him. Was she seeking death? Your spot. Yi Qingtang laughed and glanced at the clear spring. Then, she looked up and tilted her head at Song Juanqiu, who was throwing his weight around. Is your name written or an image of you carved here? Why is it yours? How dare you? You're an outer sect disciple, yet how dare you speak to senior brother Song like this? A disciple exclaimed. Yi Qingtang looked at him coldly. There was not a slight trace of fear on her face. Song Juanqiu shot a cold glare at Yi Qingtang and scoffed. What a sharp tongue. What is your name? Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang. Song Juanqiu said and looked at Yi Qingtang coldly. You are an outer sect disciple. How can you be compared to inner sect disciples like us? It is already your blessing to be able to enter the Spirit Consonance River. If you continue to ask for more, you really don't know what is good for you. Chapter 307, If you know what is good for you, get lost quickly. Don't taint my spot, Song Juanxiu said rudely with a clear hint of annoyance. This senior brother is really funny. The Spirit Consonance River is provided for all Xianling sect disciples to use, and since when was any spot set out for a disciple? If you want this area in the spring, you can come earlier. Yi Qingtang was not affected by Song Junqia's threats at all. Song Junqia's face darkened instantly, and his eyes turned shockingly cold. He had never seen such an ignorant outer sect disciple before. This person was really heedless of consequences. Don't be shameless. Senior brother Song said all this to give you face. Do you believe we will just throw you straight out? You, a mere outer sect disciple, dare to hog the best spot in the Spirit Consonance River? What a joke! Another disciple shouted in intimidation. The other onlooking inner sect disciples quietly shook their heads at that sight. It was simply overreaching one's ability for an outer sect disciple to contend with an inner sect disciple. Any one of those three people could easily kill Yi Qingtang. Where did she find the boldness to fight with Song Juanxiu head-on? Throw me out. Yi Qingtang suddenly laughed. With narrowed eyes, she swept a glance across the three people, and her curled lips formed a scoff. Why? Do you all wish to fight in the Spirit Consonance River? Yi Qingtang's tone turned colder. You all spent Xianming points to enter the Spirit Consonance River, and so did I. Plus, I spent 5 times what you all paid. What gives you the right to shout at me here? I want to ask the Spirit Consonance River Warden whether there is such a rule in Xianling sect where inner sect disciples can disregard the sect rules, do whatever they want, and oppress fellow disciples. Yi Qingtang's forceful voice crushed the silent Spirit Consonance River. The surrounding inner sect disciples were dumbfounded. Never had they expected this outer sect disciple to be so bold. Not only was she not fearful when facing 3 inner sect disciples, she even brought up the sect rules so rationally. And they were very clear that there was no error in what Yi Qingtang said. The Spirit Consonance River was originally opened for all disciples to use. Although inner sect disciples use it more frequently, outer sect disciples had to pay 5 times the number of Xianming points should they want to use it. They, themselves, were pressed for Xianming points to use the Spirit Consonance River. How much did this outer sect disciple go through to be able to exchange for the usage rights? Song Junqia's face turned red. He never expected this outer sect disciple to actually be so daring. However, in consideration of what Yi Qingtang said about notifying the warden, he did not dare to mess with her. The Spirit Consonance River's rules were not his to decide. If Yi Qingtang really lodged a complaint, he would definitely be the one in trouble. Song Juanxiu sneered. I'll let the spring to you today. Let's see what a mere outer sect disciple can achieve after obtaining the best spot. Then, Song Juanxiu immediately turned around and headed to another area with his people. Song Juanxiu suddenly stopped halfway and turned over to look at Yi Qingtang, who was at the spring. Junior Sister Yi, I wish you success in passing the inner sect assessment as soon as possible. I will definitely return today's gift back to you. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.